I'd like to introduce Pastor Russ Wynn with Springs Church, who will be here to furnish the invocation. If we could all stand, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor, and congratulations to you, Peter, and all the new councilmen and ladies that are here today. Let us pray together. Lord, I would like to thank you, Lord, and take this moment to pray a special blessing upon our newly elected city council and the people of Bonita Springs that has voted them here in this place to serve in our community. Bless Peter Simmons as he continues to provide the leadership as the mayor of this beautiful city. Bless him with the gift of leadership, along with the other council here and the personnel that's serving. Unite this council, give them that unique ability to lead this beautiful city of Bonita into a better and brighter future, a beautiful place to live and to raise our families. In your name we ask, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Wynn. Now I'd like to ask Councilman Schlachter to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
You've been honored, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba? Here. Councilman DeWitt?
Here.
Councilman
Here.
Slakta? Mayor Simmons?
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Here.
Councilman Gibson?
Here.
Councilman Forbes?
Here.
Okay. Public comment on agenda items. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on agenda items only, please, at this time?
Yes,
Hey, Rick.
Rick Steinmeier, Bonita Beach, Bonita Springs, Florida. 6A, lack of maintenance of a 100-year-old water tower. They give it to the city for 12 years and it's destroyed. I'm upset about that. I don't think it was placed properly, or some reason it deteriorated after 100 years. 8A, higher impact fees pay for growth. It also would increase the value of existing improved property that would allow the city to roll back the tax rate. I think there's many advantages to higher impact fees. Now, 9A, also referencing back to 13A, this model home is going to be built in order to sell building lots in the DRGR area. I suggest that after they sell a certain number of these lots, that they pay to have the sewer system put in, have the sewer. I can't hear you, Steve. I suggest that they have after they sell a certain number of these lots, that they pay Bonita Springs Utility to put the sewer line in. It would only be fair. Everybody else puts their sewer systems in before they build. 10B, who makes signs in Creo? How long does this law last? And who dictates what businesses must comply with this, and who's going to enforce this? Who's going to enforce this law? It's the oldest profession, by the way. 11A, I see this is a solution looking for a problem. We don't need any more laws, and where's the freedom? 13A, I spoke to under 9A, and 13B, I should live in the city if you're going to be an advisor, and 13C, let the public speak. Where's the freedom? Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Any other members of the public like to speak at this time? Good evening.
Good evening, and my name is Richard Donnelly, 25-year resident of town, and also on the zoning board. My second term on the zoning board, and I'm here as a zoning board member representing just myself. I don't speak for the entire board, but I would like to very briefly address 10A, concerning public participation at council zoning hearings. Mr. Forbes, I think this was his brainchild, and I certainly give you credit for coming to the fore with that. I think this is a splendid idea. I think one of the reasons is that we on the zoning board, we are an advisory board only. You are the folks, when it gets on your desk, who make the ultimate decision. So it behooves you to know all the evidence, as much evidence that you can possibly digest. And it could very well happen that between our zoning board meeting and your chance to look at the deal, other evidence might come to the fore. Other interested parties might come to the fore. People out of town might come in and have a view. So I think it's a good thing for you. I think it's a good thing for the city. It's a good thing for people to have a chance to speak. But most importantly, I think it gives your group more ammunition and a better background to make intelligent decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public at this time for public comment? Seeing none? Okay, we'll move on to proclamations and presentations.
Debbie, I think we got a problem with Mike.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, representative from the Salvation Army. Yes, please, come on up. This is a proclamation to the Salvation Army, whereas the City of Bonita Springs City Council is hereby declaring May 9th through the 14th, 2016 as National Salvation Army Week, and whereas a love for God and a desire to help others is the motivation behind the men and women of the Salvation Army, and whereas the Salvation Army in the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, provides comprehensive programs and services to individuals and families experiencing homelessness, poverty, addiction, illness, and injury. And whereas the Salvation Army serves as both a symbol of compassion, as an active participant in the provision of services to thousands of Bonita Springs men, women, and children. And whereas the Salvation Army has been providing these programs to residents for 65 years, and whereas the Salvation Army provides its services to people in need regardless of race, color, creed, sex, or age, now therefore I, Peter Simmons, Mayor of the City of Bonita Springs, support and encourage all citizens to recognize the week of May 9th through 14th, 2016 as National Salvation Army Week in the City of Bonita Springs, and urge all citizens to join me in honoring the dedicated men and women who work and volunteer for this fine organization that touch the lives of so many.
Just want to say thank you, Mayor, for the declaration. My wife and I have been working here for about 5 months now, and we're really excited for the work that's going on in Bonita Springs, and we hope to continue that work here for the people, serving you. Thank you. And I would also like to ask someone to take a picture for us, if you could.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think, is Nicole going to come up for this? Hello. How are you, Nicole? Doing well. Whereas, for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans, and whereas today millions of Americans engage in bicycling as an environmentally sound form of transportation, an excellent form of fitness, and quality family recreation, and whereas the education of cyclists and motorists as to the proper and safe operation of bicycles is important to ensure the safety and comfort of all users, and whereas since 2000, bike commuting has grown by 62%, with 864,883 bike commuters, give or take, Whereas the League of American Bicyclists and independent cyclists throughout our state are promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities for all. Now, therefore, I, Peter Simmons, Mayor of the City of Bonita Springs, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2016 as National Bike Month throughout the city, and encourage all citizens to recognize the importance of bicycle safety and to be made more aware of cyclists on the streets and highways. Signed, Peter Simmons.
Thank you. I'm actually accepting this on behalf of the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board. I am the staff liaison for the city, so I'm accepting it on their behalf tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're going to move on now to a presentation by the Bonita Wonder Gardens for their annual report to the City Council, Green Sheet number 16-05-0126, and I see former Councilwoman Janet Martin and Trish Leonard approaching. Hello and welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Simmons and Council. Welcome all of the new council members up here. For the record, I'm Trish Leonard, president of the Bonita Wonder Gardens, which is a 501c3 representing the Everglades Wonder Gardens on Old 41. Just curious, how many of you have been there in the past year? Yay, thank you. How many of y'all are members of the Wonder Gardens?
They're gonna be.
All right. Had to do that, I'm sorry. So we look forward to the presentation tonight, but we also look forward to coming back on June 1st with a check presentation for you all. So I just want to at least get that out there so you're not freaking out. So tonight, Janet is going to be doing a quick presentation, but before we do that, I do want to thank Carl over here to my right and the City Council, the previous City Council, for the support and everything they have done for us here at the Wonder Gardens. I also want to thank our board of directors, which I know several are in the audience here. Put your hand up if you are here. Some of our board of directors, as well as our volunteers and supporters of the community who have helped us these past 9 months. It's really not been a year, it's been 9 months that the actual board of directors has taken over. So we have some great, fantastic support. Janet's going to give you a quick report on everything, and I know you all have your packets. So thank you again. If you have any questions at the end, we will be here to answer what we can.
Thank you and good evening. Strange being on this side. But let's see if I can mess this up like so many of presenters did when I was sitting up there. So we're going to go for that. Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and it's my pleasure to tell you about what we've done in the past 10 months at the Wonder Gardens. And the biggest thing is that we celebrated our 80th anniversary this year, and that is a huge milestone because, as we all know, in 1936 there wasn't a whole lot going on in Bonita Springs, but the Everglades Wonder Gardens was formed. So here we go on our journey. So we've got a little bit of history going on there. You know, Bill and Lester Piper, they were the iconic founders. And Bill went on to be a cattleman, but Lester stayed on the property, and he is the one that really, really formed the gardens as they were. What little known fact that isn't always out there is that it was originally opened as the Reptile Gardens. And because there were other animals being brought to them all the time, because there was not any other rescue organizations or a zoo that you could bring a orphaned bear or panther to, they brought them to the Wonder Gardens. And Bill and Lester's wives and the boys themselves, no zoological training at all, took in those animals, and they bottle fed those babies. And the one thing that they haven't been credited for that is amazing is that they bred 22 Florida panthers and re-released them into the wild, and that was pretty awesome for them to do that at that time. So, and this is what we're really proud of, and that is in 10 months we have crossed the 20,000 threshold in visitors. And what that means is that we are a destination. We are bringing the visitors to downtown Bonita Springs. And that's important. My pleasure. That number does not include that this year, for the first time ever, we created a membership program. Family memberships are the one that has succeeded in our expectations and we are seeing families coming back over and over. We have some families that come every weekend to visit us, and we didn't even include that. So if you want to include the local families, that number is even bigger. And of course, we were so pleased that the transfer of the property happened when it did, because the Piper family was liquidating everything and they were selling anything that they could, and we are so pleased and happy that we were able to keep Big Joe. Big Joe was their claim to fame for a lot of years. He was 75 years old, so we have visitors that come back and say, I remember coming here with Big Joe. So we get to tell them we have Big Joe, and we created a brand new Everglades diorama along with other taxidermies that they had on the property. And folks are just thrilled, especially grandparents bringing their grandchildren in, and they get to say, I saw Big Joe when he was alive, and that was really awesome. And he's still a jaw dropper. He really is. This is something else that we are truly, truly, truly excited about and proud, is that the first thing that we did, the board of directors, was that the facility, being 80 years old, was never handicapped accessible. So we have created the ramp out the front there, that beautiful wall that matched the original stonework on the front porch. We added that handicap ramp. We have also added the 2 handicap parking spots right to the front there. And then we also added the handicap ramps out the back door. There used to be an 8-inch step, so imagine trying to navigate that. And what we've also found that who is really excited about this is moms and strollers. You know, this is a big deal. So once we completed that, I have to give kudos to the members of the Bonita Springs Morning AM and Noon Rotary, because they came and donated 3 wheelchairs for our guests' use. Those wheelchairs, I can tell you, are used every single day. That was an awesome thing for them to do for us. 1,400 volunteer hours accumulated. Really proud about that. We have been adopted by the sorority sisters from FGCU of Phi Mu, and they come every Sunday morning, and they now call this their gym workout. So they give up gym on Sunday and they come to the Wonder Gardens, and we put them through our paces. And we just have this wonderful, wonderful crew of committed volunteers that help us. Without them, many projects wouldn't get done. And we're very excited for the Twisted Tangle Cafe to open up soon. This is Miss Alicia Rhodes, and she is just tickled pink there. That was her lease signing day, and she will be opening up soon. She's going to be a huge part to downtown. It's another opportunity to send people to places to eat. Our guests come in and ask all the time. They don't want to go to a chain. Where can they go to mom and pops? And we're going to be really excited to be able to have this. Plus, it's just going to be nice. She's going to do a boxed lunch. So folks that are visiting the Wonder Gardens can pick up a boxed lunch and take it into the gardens, have lunch with us, and stay a little longer. We are expanding our educational programs. That's something that never happened on the property. You went in and you bought a ticket and you got a tour, and you were like basically within that time frame shoved out it, and that was it. No, we want our folks to stay, hang around with us, enjoy their time there, but we are doing huge outreach to the younger ones. Our young visitors are our future, and they are also the ones that will be making decisions about habitat and saving animals in our future. So we love it when we can actually connect with them. And our new water turtle exhibit. This is one of the examples of community partnering. We had a volunteer come with a digger, dig out that had been a filled-in compost pile. It originally was home to 7 crocs, and we were able to put that with a biofilter that was done by our staff. The volunteers put the fencing in, and that is one of our hits as of a new display within the gardens. And then I thought, you know what, you can't do a presentation without a graph, so here's our graph. Like I said, the membership program is brand new this year. We rolled that out in September of 2015, and as of yesterday, we had 198 memberships sold. So who's going to break 200 tonight? Somebody in here's room's got to do that for us, because that would be really awesome. But as you can see on the pie chart, it's the families that are purchasing those memberships, and that's really sweet. These are two of the large other projects that we completed, was removing the fence along the south side, along the riverfront, so we have opened ourselves up to be a part of downtown. Used to be a 10-foot tall wooden stockade fence. So the guests couldn't see the river, and people across the river didn't know what was going on there. We now feel like we are a part of the community. And then our Amazon parrot enclosure, that was FGCU students that needed an environmental project. They had to do a lot of research to find out what is the best way to house those parrots. They did that. We also had community donor support to pay for the wire, and also staff and volunteers put it together. So another new exhibit. And then these are some of our wonderful TripAdvisors. We keep getting awesome TripAdvisor reviews, and for an attraction, that's what you want. We ask all of our guests, where have you heard from us? Why are you here? And the majority of them have said, that are not local, have said, we found you on TripAdvisor, so we had to come see. So we are getting awesome, awesome reviews. So I'll just read one of them, and it said, a great place to go if you have kids. The keepers are very knowledgeable and approachable, nicely shaded if you want to get a break from the sun. Awesome. This is another awesome initiative. The Bonita Bay Garden Club ladies had a fundraiser to help us to purchase botanical signage. We want to be a botanical jungle, so we said we needed to do that, and they came in, had a fundraiser, raised the funds for the botanical signage, and was so successful with their fundraiser, we were able to actually buy wildlife signage too. So kudos to them, and this was taken the day that the signs arrived. They were there gardening. And coming soon, first ever time on the property, we are creating a natural children's play area so that the kids and those families that come week after week and want to enjoy the grounds, they're going to have an area dedicated just for them. And then this is Picasso. Picasso is new to the gardens, and I have to tell you, look at this beautiful bird. He is the most photographed creature on our property right now, but he's saying thank you to all of you for your support. Thank you to the whole community. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Now I'd like to call Carol Green, please, with an update from Capital Strategies. Sure, Peter.
I'd just like to make one comment. So many of us, when the gardens were in jeopardy, were saying, can you imagine Bonita Springs without it? So I just want to personally thank everyone, Gary and Dennis and Trish and Janet for, yeah, for, fabulous job done.
And Carol Green, if you'd like to come forward, she's going to give us a recap of the 2016 legislative session in Tallahassee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilmen and women. It's great to be with you this evening. Ashley Stasel, who is my business partner, I think all of you have had an opportunity to meet, and she normally is here to help with this, but her twin boys turned 5 today. So she's got mama duties tonight, and I think we can all excuse her for that and to be able to be with them. So, and that was fine. I was glad to be able to stand in. And she reminded me that she did the report last year, so it really was my turn. So, and that's fine. I know that you have received the written report that we send to you, our final report that we send out, so that you have an opportunity to know a little bit of some of the things that went on. I'm here to give you kind of a snapshot view of excuse me, some of the things that we actually were faced with this year. I note that the next thing on your agenda is for Mr. Generalis to give you an update about the $450,000 that we have advocated for and received for Lover's Key. I find it interesting. You get this wonderful Wonder Gardens, and then you get Lover's Key, and you get me in the middle. So I'm not really sure how Tallahassee fits in the middle, but anyway, we were really pleased to see that happened and to see the fact that it did not get the veto pin placed to it. So we're really excited about all of that and what we need to do to go forward with that too. The things that really I think were more important than the report in many ways were the things that didn't pass. We found this to be another year that happens where we're spending the majority of our time playing defense. We find that home rule is consistently under pressure to be changed, to be taken away, and consequently, we find most of the bills that we were advocating we were advocating against most of the bills that we had a lot of play with and a lot of interaction with. So we were able to do that pretty successfully with some of them. I know that everyone watched with great interest the fracking bill, and of course that didn't go anywhere this year. We don't know. There's a little speculation on whether or not the fracking bill will even come back next year. Used to be we fought fertilizer ordinance every year. There was a little whisper of that this year, but the whisper didn't turn into anything, and so again we were just watching that to make sure that we were heard when it came to that. There were others with the Public Works bill, the municipal elections bill, making changes, dramatic changes actually, to home rule. So all of those things took a great deal of time to make sure that our message was heard. We certainly appreciate the fact that some of you were able to be with us this year, to have the opportunity to lobby on our behalf and to be able to advocate on behalf of Bonita. It's always nice to have other faces there of locals that come to visit. I do want to take just a minute and talk a little bit about gaming, because that is an issue that has been very big, talked about a lot over the last couple of years, especially with the fact that the Seminole Compact actually is coming to an end, needing to figure out what we're going to do as we go forward with that. So what we're seeing right now, of course, is that it is going to be heard by the Florida Supreme Court. Oral arguments will start around June 7th, so we'll be watching that with interest to see exactly what happens there. I will also tell you that just as of the last couple of weeks or so, we have heard rumblings about the fact that there is a group that's coming together to put together a constitutional amendment that would be proposed in 2018. That's pretty much all I can tell you about it, because I haven't read the verbiage yet, so I'm not sure what the constitutional amendment is going to say. It's just a whisper that's starting to happen, and usually when those things start to happen, then we'll see whether or not it gets any real play in that. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and then certainly I'm open to any questions or concerns that you might want to share with me. It's an interesting year because everyone is up for re-election. Usually we have some that are not in the Senate. The House is always up every 2 years. But this year, because of the fact that we had a judicial ruling that we were going to do redistricting through the courts, that threw everybody in the Senate into new Senate district numbers, and so consequently it's thrown everyone into races. I will tell you that there will probably be some competitive races across the state. We're probably not going to see a lot of competitive races here in Southwest Florida. June 24th is the day that we'll be watching for. That's the day of qualifying. We'll know then if there are any viable candidacies that have popped up with some of our local delegation. All that is true except for the fact that Garrett Richter, Senator Richter, was termed out this year. And that is a very competitive race. There are people that are running for that seat. They're both really good people. So we will just continue to stay tuned to that and see how that works out. We also know that we have a new incoming speaker and a new incoming president of the Senate. Fortunately, I've known both of those gentlemen for a long time. Actually, have served with the president of the Senate when I was in the legislature. They're both good men. We would anticipate that there's not going to be some of the acrimony that we've seen in the past, but of course, don't hold your breath because it's politics and things happen. Swearing in this year will be the last week of November. There will not be any committee meetings prior to that because everyone is going to be running for re-election. So the last week of November actually is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving is swearing in. At that point, then we will start looking to see when the committee meetings and committee weeks will start. This year we will be, next year actually, 2017, we will be seeing our 60 days move back to the March, April, and then the first week of May time frame. That will be an every other year situation, at least for the next 2 to 3 years that are coming up. And we will see a lot of committee weeks, January and February. We'll probably be there most of January and February with the committee weeks. That being said, I'm more than glad to take any questions that you might have, any concerns that you'd like to share with me. I'm certainly glad to take those at this time.
Council?
We're good?
No, I'd say great job, and of course,
Thank you.
as we move forward here, of course, we'll be giving you our legislative priorities
Absolutely.
as we always do, and look forward to working with you on the next legislative session.
Yes, sir, we do too. And I can tell you, I think we've served the city council here in Bonita now for, I think it's 9 years. And we've been really pleased to be able to serve in that role. Feel that the partnership, from our perspective, the partnership has been one that we certainly treasure.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
thank
Carol. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item E now, a presentation by Mark Generales of the $450,000 funding received for Lovers Key State Park Environmental Education Center.
Well, it's
Hello,
going to
Mark.
be a good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate getting the opportunity to see you, Carl, and all of you that are new. Good stuff. My presentation is going to be really not a presentation, but a thank you this evening. About 2 or 3 years ago, I had joined the board of Friends of Lovers Key. Actually, I guess it was more like 4 years ago. And in the process, joined them in the effort to try and build a new visitor center now called an Environmental Education Center. And we saw the issues that we're all involved in trying to raise funds in a competitive market, just coming off of, obviously, the bad downturn in the economy and all the other things that are going along with it. It's a funny thing, and I have to point out, my comments this evening, while they're coming from me, really are meant for a whole lot of folks, but it has to be coming from me for one very simple reason. The rules state very clearly that a citizens support organization for a state park is not allowed to lobby for funds from any governmental agency or entity. As a consequence, the board was left to try and raise the funds on a volunteer basis in a locally and not coming to government. And I saw the difficulty that was going on. I've been in office before, and I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to step out of the box and go off on my own, which is essentially what I've done. So I'm here this evening to say thank you on my behalf, because the good folks in the State House were willing to go ahead and provide the appropriation that I had asked for. But I have to say an awful lot of thanks to all of you. The city has been a tremendous partner in this process. I have to say thanks to the council members who are here, those who were here before, and a very sincere thanks to Carl for all of the help that he has given. Without exception, and Carol, who preceded me here, I spent a day with her walking through the halls, and any of you who have done this would know how much energy this woman has and how many people. I was startled at how many people.
Energized bunny.
She knows everybody there. I was startled. But it was a great, great meeting that we had with the governor's staff, which was a critical session, because I can tell you that a year ago, we were fortunate to have $300,000 put forward as an appropriation amount, but it was turned down and rejected by the governor. And part of my fear this year, as we went into trying to do this again, was that unless we went and spent some time with people in the governor's office, we might not succeed. And thanks to Carol, we got the meeting. We had a great opportunity. It worked out exceedingly well. And obviously, we now have an appropriation, which, by the way, was 50% higher than the request from the previous year. It doesn't end here. We will get our funding, meet with the state, and work on getting a building started. And I really look forward to our opportunity to host you folks at the park for a groundbreaking ceremony. The funds that we're receiving should be enough to get us through design and permitting, and should allow us to start breaking ground and getting things going. But our total amount for the building and our total appropriation request was for $3 million. So you're going to see me back asking for your help as we go back for a second bite at the apple, and hopefully continue to get the funding that's necessary to go forward. Note, why are we doing this? And I will stop here and answer any questions you have. The park is the second most visited park in the state of Florida. A lot of folks don't realize how significant this particular institution is in its capacity in adding to our local area. We know there are over 700 full-time jobs that come as a result of the park. We know we have 1 million visitors that come through the gate during the year. We know if you walk down the beach, a good probably 50 to 60% of the people on the beach are not speaking English, which means there's a head in a bed somewhere that is probably eating out and generating a whole lot of economic vibrancy to our community. The state figure for 2014, 2015 was $72 million specifically as a result of the park. So it means a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities. And at the very least, the group that Carol got us together with was the environmental folks at the state level, which was interesting to see. But if you go back and you take a look at what is happening with us with water and everything else in our area, plug in Lover's Key and understand that from Cayo Costa all the way down to Key Waden Island, the really only large unbroken stretch of coastline that is not developed is Lover's Key. And it backs onto the bay at the same time. So they understood the jobs, they understood the economy, they understood the environment. It was all a part of the picture, and hopefully we'll bring this forward. But my day today was, my reason for being here today was, as I had asked Carl, give me an opportunity to come and say thank you to all of you for your help and assistance, allowing me to work with Carol and do all of the things that we've done, and I look forward to working with you in this new year. Thank you so very much to all of you. Before I leave, let me just introduce Rich Donnelly. Rich is a member of the board. Stand up, Rich. Rich designed the building that we are hopefully going to have built here soon. He's been a board member and a volunteer at the park for a long, long time, and without him, this all wouldn't have been done. So let me stop here, answer any questions if you have any.
Sure. Councilman Schlechter?
Mark,
Yes, Steve.
a lot of people don't know that the Rotary Club had its first nautical event for Lover's Key. Would you tell them a little bit about how much money we raised? And
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
What a great fun time we had. This was terrific. Lover's Key, Friends of Lover's Key, and the Bonita Springs Morning Rotary Club, like any of these institutions, has a very, very hard time trying to figure out what events can we hold to raise funds, not wear everybody out, and actually do a decent job that presents something to the community. And I had sat back and thought, you know, we got to do something. And some folks at Lover's Key had thought of maybe doing a fishing tournament. And I took this to one of our members, Gary Murphy, and I said, Gary, what do you think? And he said, you know, you should look at a flea market. And I don't know any of you who, if you boat at all, if you ever heard of the Dania Flea Market, which is the largest in the world, and it's all nautical. And found out that down in Isla Mirada, the Rotary Club there has been doing one now for 19 years. Last year they raised over $300,000 in funds. It's a substantial amount for any kind of charitable organization. So anyway, we bought into it. I was fortunate to have both organizations come together. So Lover's Key provides the space and help from their volunteers and the park itself. And the Rotary Club stepped up with all of our manpower and everything else. And we put on a nautical flea market, the first annual nautical flea market. We did it the 18th of May that weekend. And folks, let me tell you how well this was received. In 3 days, we had 3,600 people come through the gate. We generated over $16,000 in net revenues, which will be split between the Rotary Club and Friends of Lover's Key. And we hope that we're going to be able to grow this thing substantially. We had well over 50 vendors that were there, along with 5 or 6 boat dealers, and just a great crowd all weekend long. And I can tell you, if we had a little warmer weather and not as much rain, we probably would have cleared 20, the way things were going. But it was really well received. And the vendors themselves were excited to be there. So that's half the battle. Because, you know, when you're trying to sell to an audience, we had 2 audiences. I had to sell to the vendors to get them to come because it was a first-time show, which most folks are pretty reluctant to participate. We were successful at getting them and then getting the folks out. And so we look forward to next year. Hopefully, thanks for asking, Steve.
Mark,
really
thank you
was a big deal.
for honchoing that thing. It's a wonderful first-time event.
It's great stuff.
Great, thank you.
But thank you all. It's just been so great.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we're now going to move on to item F, presentation relative to the demolition of the water tower and construction of a replica water tower at the existing location at the Lyles Hotel Plaza. Nicole Perino.
Alrighty. Yes, Nicole Perino, Parks and Recreation Director. I am here tonight to discuss the water tower at the Lyles Hotel Plaza. This has been a project we've been working on for 14 months now. I actually looked that up to see where we are at. In November, we did present this to City Council for their direction in that we are at a point now where we do have to complete a demolition of the water tower. The bigger direction is what would you like us to do? Would you like us to demo the existing tower and do nothing? Or would you like us to build a replica in its place? In November, the previous City Council asked us to go before the Historic Preservation Board for their recommendation. I did do that. I presented the information to the Historic Preservation Board. They did approve a special certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the water tower, and that actually removes it from the historical designation list because the replica itself, they felt, had no longer had historical significance. So the demolition is what is required to remove it from that historic designation list. They did recommend by majority to build a replica to show, what the tower did look like, but that, of course, they didn't approve any sort of certificate. It was more just approving the certificate for the demolition to remove it from the list. We do have 2 quotes for a replica, if that is something you would like us to do. The lowest one is $24,150. We did, again, work for 14 months to get 2 quotes, so it did take some time. Most contractors, they just said, the wood is all rotting away, there's nothing we can do. We did try to restore it first, but we couldn't find anyone that was able to do that. So at this point, we are at a replica or nothing, but the demolition does have to occur because it is a safety issue. The wood is rotting away. If we have a bad storm season, it could blow away, and that could be a liability issue for us. So at this point, we are just looking for your direction. It is not in the budget funded for the $24,150, so it would be something we would have to get with Ann to figure out if that's something you wanted us to do. And the cost for demolition is approximately $1,500.
Okay, council?
I take it that
Councilwoman
we could
Carumba.
just demolish it at this point, and at a later time, we could build a replica if we wanted.
Absolutely.
And I have a question. This picture, we have like the tower on the top,
Mm-hmm.
and then a foundation. We're just talking about taking this part down. right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, the foundation would stay.
Okay. Thank you.
Greg?
I just make a motion to demolition and look for a second, then open it up for discussion.
Second.
Okay. It's been a motion and a second. Discussion.
I guess my question is we don't have it in the budget this year, but could we find the money in the budget to, even if we want to do not so much a replica, of maybe like a 1/5 scale and put a bronze plaque there, or maybe with a piece of the wood there to show the people in the future, hey, this is where the tower used to be, or this is what the wood was made of, or something like that, maybe to appease both sides of it, being the Historical Society and the citizens of Bonita.
In terms of the wood,
Yeah.
I can't save any of the wood because it is rotting away. There are metal rings that are on it that can be saved in some way, that maybe we could figure out a way to turn it into some sort of art piece or something
Yeah, that's what I
like
was thinking,
that.
something like the September 11th, or like we've done, like Bob Gillette did with the wall. I mean, we don't have to do it this year, but I would try and save what we can from it, and maybe down the road the Historical Society can come up with a partnership with the city. But I think a plaque or some memorial should be on that location to at least signify this is where the tower used to set, and so on. I know those are fairly cheap.
It didn't actually sit there, though.
No.
Well, it didn't sit there, but that's
no.
where it's
Yeah.
been for the last.
There is currently a plaque already on the structure talking about the water tower. That's already there. In terms of, possibly saving the rings or something and putting them in that location or a different location, I mean, that's something we could look into. And the different contractors can do that. But they said, there's nothing they can do to save any of the wood.
Yeah, I'm for saving the rings, and if we do rebuild it, if they could reuse the rings on it, something like that. I don't know. I don't know if we do build it at a smaller scale. I don't know how much really that would save us over the.
No, I'm talking like 1/5, like this,
But then
size of a water cooler.
Yeah, it would look kind of odd on top of that pedestal.
No, I wouldn't put it beside.
Then what do we do with the big?
I wouldn't put it beside. I would put it beside where the plaque is. What I was thinking.
So the big question is, what do we do with that big pedestal if we don't have a water?
It's all a matter of
tower there?
scale,
So,
Mike. see?
like art in public places, can
That's
they find
exactly
something?
what we were thinking in terms of park staff is that we would have discussions with the Art and Public Places Board of putting an art piece on top of that structure if the water tower didn't go there.
Can you tell us succinctly what the pros and cons were on either side of do a replica or not at the board?
At the Historic Preservation Board, some didn't feel it was necessary because it was no longer historical at that point. Once you build a replica, it doesn't have any historical significance. Others wanted us to continue to try to restore it, and we can't. So that's kind of the discussion that went back and forth during the meeting.
Was there a strong feeling for a replica, or it was okay?
The majority of the vote of the Historic Preservation Board was for the replica to show the community an example of what this type of water towers that there were. Right. There was a couple that were strongly opposed to that as well, but the majority of the board felt that the community could see an example of what the replica of what a water tower in that period, historical period, represented, and that the plaque could be amended to show it's a replica instead of the actual historic piece.
Okay. Anybody else?
We get a motion.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's been a motion and a second. No further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Okay. Carries 7-0. Thank you.
And that was demolish, but save the rings and whatever we can
Yes.
save.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Anybody want to pull any items, or?
I don't want to, but I'm going to pull C.
Okay. Any others?
A move to approve the rest.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Roll call.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Whoa. I didn't do it.
You lied.
Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Okay, Pete.
Okay, Matt's again.
Matt Feeney, come on up.
So thanks for doing this, or having this done.
Yes, sir.
We're talking about electronic rendering of an elevation of the landscaping for those who don't have it. So just a few questions. One is, the elephant behind it really isn't hidden, at least the way I'm looking at this. Now, I'm not saying you can hide the whole storage unit, but at least as best I could make out by looking at this, there's not much out there. Now, is that just an element of the way the electronic version works, or?
Matt Feeney for the record.
Okay.
Sorry.
Again.
I think it's a little with electronic renderings or any
Right.
rendering, it's hard to see the entire picture. One thing with these renderings, I pointed out in the green sheet, I asked them to show the plant material as it goes in today.
Right.
And it does break up the silhouette, but as far as an entire screening, I don't believe it completely screens it. There is what's called a screw pine.
Okay.
And it is not a pine tree. It's a very ornamental looking type plant, and it's out in the middle of the peninsula, and it has a root ball that's almost as wide. It grows with multi stems, and it has a root ball almost as wide as your maybe half of the diameter of this dais out in front of me.
Right.
So I think that plant material, one of my project managers has gone and identified that actual plant at the nursery over in Homestead. I think it will help break that image up, but it does not create an entire blockage of the
One
image.
reason I mention it, and it's obviously a large building, but I'm sure you've been in Bonita Bay, and the marina there is a huge building. You don't even know it's there, the way it's screened with various types of trees. So just something to think about. I'm not trying to play landscape architect as much as think about trying to screen that building from the vista on Arroyo.
Yeah.
Other than that, so the plantings are all trees then, is that right?
Yes, sir.
In other words, there's nothing under its trees. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and
Counsel? Mike, go ahead.
One thing to note, the first couple renderings are like an aerial view. It's up higher, so you see more of the building. But when you're down at eye level, it does, wind up breaking it up more.
Okay, fair point.
But then the other thing would be, will this leave room for a future path to go that was originally designed?
Yes, it's the original design had the path accommodated, so with the current layout that you see, that path could be installed at a future date. That the plantings don't preclude that.
Okay.
What path would that be?
We were going to have a walking, jogging path around the pond.
All right. I'll just drop one footnote, which, nothing we can do about it right here, right now, but it's not inconceivable that one of McMahon's recommendations would have to do with going through that pond or going around the side of it to avoid inconveniencing the houses on that one street to the south, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Council, anything else? Motion to approve?
Yeah. So moved?
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilman
Aye.
Susta.
Okay, motion carries. Mayor and council member items. Item A, request staff to survey other areas of southern Florida as to what impact fees are being charged. This is green sheet number 16-05-0120. Councilmember Fred Forbes.
Right. Before we can intelligently discuss, I believe, raising impact fees, I think we need to survey what is being charged in the other governmental areas of cities and villages, counties, and all that. And my green sheet did say that I wanted to concentrate in the areas where they're undergoing either a population boom or a construction boom, which is what this area of Florida is in. But it also would extend south as well as east. And I think once we get that, then I think you could start to have an intelligent discussion about what we think we should do.
Okay, Pete?
I think it's a great idea to look at it, not to say that we're going to raise them, but let's see where we are from a competitive point of view.
Right.
Information is always important, so I concur.
Greg?
My only question is, back to Carl, do we set our own? I know at the fire district, we have to go before the county in order to do that, and they have to have a study. Does the city have to do the same thing with presenting a study and justifying this?
That's correct.
Okay.
Except we approve it.
Yeah, but we
It's
still have to
controlled by
prove.
the city. It's controlled by the city, not the county.
Okay.
Yes.
So we don't have to have the county's permission or anything. We can just tomorrow say we're going to raise them to X and don't have to have justification.
Upon a study that justifies the increase.
Okay.
The
So we're
council
going to have
can
to
do
pay
that.
for a study to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And the other thing is, I think information is good, but understand also that the nature of impact fees are pretty much unique to each community, depending on how they need those funds to respond to the growth they have in that individual community. But yes, it'll be interesting to see what other communities are at in terms of levels of their impact fees.
Carl, that does that have to go through the MPO at all?
No, sir.
And the only reason to get this going now is if we were to raise them, the sooner we do it, the sooner we start getting the benefits of the raise. And we may not decide to raise them, but they certainly need to be looked at.
No, I agree they need to be looked at, but we also got to remember too, they're going to be passed on to the consumer. The builders and the developers aren't just going to eat that. They're going to pass it on to the consumers. So, just we need to have that in mind also.
Also, just one more note, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. When you take a look at all of our impact fee tables, there are a significant number of them based upon size of a hotel, numbers of rooms, whatever it might be. There's a lot of different tables. And I would hope council would feel comfortable that we would pick out major categories that are likely to be here so that we can have not an overwhelming task and also something that's going to be more meaningful to the council and the public. Comfortable with that?
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank
The,
you.
the other question I do have, I know in our previous meeting that we had with the capital improvement the statement was made that the impact fees, if we don't use them, we have to give them back.
That's correct. Under Florida, and let me talk a little bit about impact fees. Impact fees, it used to be strictly case law that set up impact fees, and that's how it originated in the state about 1986 or so. About 5 years ago or so, they adopted a state statute, and we do have to follow that. It does require to have impact fee studies, not just a survey, to make sure you follow the dual rational nexus test. I'm not here and explaining the test for you today because it will really confuse you. But there is a whole formula, and that's why you go get the study done. And there's about 2 or 3 people who do these type of studies that are accountants or economists that are involved in it. The other thing I wanted to point out is the city has very specific impact fees that it charges for things that it feels important, but there are other jurisdictions that charge, that assess impact fees for other items that you feel are necessary for people to pay the impact to improve that. And I don't know if you would also want that to be part of the study. For example, while we have parks on it, we don't have libraries. Libraries is something that you could have an impact fee. Basically, any of the concurrency components are things that you could add. Stormwater, you could add a type of fee. Although stormwater fees are a lot different, assessments are different than the capital improvement of impact fees, but you can do both.
But it has to be for new growth, not for continued growth.
Right, there's other types of fees that you could, wait, for new growth,
For
yes.
my point being is we can't use an impact fee, a road impact fee for repavement, or can we? It has to be for a new road or adding to it or adding
Adding
lanes.
capacity to the road, adding, generally it's the impact.
It's not for
that-
maintenance.
It's correct. It's the
Right.
impact that the new community, the new folks have caused to your infrastructure that you wish to pay for that impact via the impact fee. Now, it used to be that people would say growth would pay for growth, and they'd build roads to nowhere, and you say, well, ad valorem tax, once it gets here, we'll do it. And governments determined that that was not necessarily the best way. So that's where it is for capital expenditures. You're right.
My last question, or would be, not question, be request, is can Ann give us any background of, have we ever given back impact fee money? And if so, what category was it? Was it in X, Y, or Z? It doesn't have to be today. Doesn't have to be today.
I think we have the answer. I don't think we ever have we?
We have not, based on the amount of years people have managed to spend it within the time. We have had some expire that they didn't get to use it because impact fees are perishable. If they have like an impact fee credit because they provided something and they weren't able to spend it within time, it does expire. We do have development agreements where we have partnered, most notably sections 1 and 2, where they agreed to pay an additional impact fee above and beyond the impact fee voluntarily of an additional 50%, and then they were able to offset that somewhat with a credit that they received, and I think they've already spent out all their credit at this point.
But the answer is we've never had to refund
Okay.
any impact fees. They were all spent
Spent out. Good.
within the time limits required.
All right.
Question.
Fred.
Audrey, I believe that, didn't you come up with a ordinance or something that amended what we can spend road impact fees on? It broadened the things that you...
Yes, I did. The county changed their road impact fee, and so did I, to allow additional road and actually intermodal facilities, things that help reduce capacity on the roads.
Right. Okay. Good.
Okay.
So Carl,
Pete?
yeah, if I had to predict, we will not be increasing them, but if we're doing this survey, I think reflecting on what Audrey said, if there are any nearby communities that do have any other significant impact fees along the lines that she's referring to, it would be good to know it. You don't have to look at 5,000 of them.
Like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
stormwater.
Right, right. Anybody else? Okay. Do we need a motion on this in a second?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay. It's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilman Slack.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye. Okay, item B, discuss which procedure as outlined below should be used for relating to how volunteers are selected by council
Right.
for appointment to volunteer committees such as LPA and zoning. Green sheet number 16-05-0123. Councilman Forbes.
All right, well, first of all, and Audrey, I think, has some good points to make on this, but the one thing I believe that that we strive to do, but I'm not sure that we're getting it done, is that there's a pretty good representation from each of the districts on all the committees. And I think one thing that we should do before we do anything with this at all, or get to the point of making appointments, which there's one in LPA coming up, and I believe there's now one on zoning that may be coming up. At least I think the newspaper may have said that. But anyway, I think we should have a real quickly, but for the next meeting, by committee, the names of the people who are on it and what district they are from, and if there's a vacancy, the district that vacancy came from. And that'll tell us how balanced the different committees are. I think that that's a good thing. I also want to be quick to add that I think that the qualifications and experience of the person does override trying to have a perfect balance of, and a case in point, the previous vacancy on zoning was from a person that lived in District 6 who resigned because they moved up into Estero, and it was the new appointment who is as good as you can get. Mr. Wooster was not from District 6, but I concur with that. But I think we need to have a little discussion how we want to do it. I think the one method that I think the things have been revised to where the mayor actually comes in with recommendations.
As
There's
a
all kind of
chairperson.
ways you can do it. Audrey, I know, has got some points, and she did say something about she needed to change something in this procedure anyway. So, in fact, she said my green sheet was timely. So.
Yes, I did. I didn't send that to the rest of you because what I did is I attached the city's administrative code, which has, we've been dealing with this issue since 2006, and actually even before that, but we've had an administrative code for committee appointments. And the most recent change of it was in 2014. And what we discovered in 2015, one of the things we did is we synced everybody up for their appointment time. And what we discovered in 2015, the process that we set up between the staff liaison and the city clerk needed some additional massaging to make it correct. I think that's probably the best way to put it. That was up there, but I believe that there is a compilation, a list of who appointed it. They did work backwards to find that. That's up there. So your timing is great because I am in the process of amending it, so if you do wish to somewhat change some of the process, I think that's a great idea. I do want to point out that the city charter does say that the mayor is the one who appoints everybody, but it's in consultation with council. So as much, at the end of the day, it's the mayor's call on some of this.
And at the end of the day, I'd like to have the input of everybody on council.
Well, I think our goal is, as you indicated in the green sheet, is that we try to get someone from every district. However, that's not always possible because I know there are some people that there's 2 or 3 people from the same district. And but that should be our goal.
All right.
Then there was another issue that we've talked about, we've never done. Council has term limits. We don't ever have we've never had term limits for appointees. I don't know if that's something council wants to discuss, if it's an issue, or hold off, or your call.
I really don't have any problem with term limits because, I mean, I think some of the good things, like if you look at the zoning board, Pete Pastore, he's been on there since the beginning of time, and, and he brings a lot of basic history to that zoning board. So I'm feeling like we shouldn't have term limits on the committee. As long as you want to serve, serve.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman. I mean, it's one of those things, if we had people waiting in the wings, it may be a different story, but.
Right. Waiting list, right?
But there could be a chicken and an egg with it. I'm not, right, in other words. We do have terms, though.
They do. Most committees are either 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, depending on which committee.
Fred, anything further?
No, I hope that when we go to appoint, that we've got this sheet with what district the current member lives in.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And they have in the past.
They
so
have,
that'll
yeah.
be consistent.
I think the way Fred and I think Steve have both put it, it makes sense, which is, first of all, it starts with a charter, right? So it's mayor with advice and consent. And then there's a preference to have, obviously, across the city, various representation with the understanding that's not cut and dry, that there may be situations where there needs to be flexibility in it, in individual situations.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I would agree.
Okay, anything further?
Nope.
Okay, is there a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
Motion and a
Second.
second?
Of
Okay.
which option 1 or option 2?
Well, I don't know
Well,
which one it is.
yeah, let me just see if I understand. You want staff to come back with a council list of who made the appointment so that you can, as a council, determine the balance of it.
For-
And then the second thing
For the
would be
LPA.
amend the administrative code once I receive additional direction from you.
Well, Mike, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think it's whenever the boards come up for reelection, have where they were appointed from. So that way, when we're looking at it, that's when we would need to know anyway. We don't need to know now.
I think we have one coming up.
You've got a seat, you've got 2 seats coming up. You got LPA right now, my old seat.
Yeah. Well,
And then you've got another one coming up, I believe, maybe from zoning. I think.
well, and that's what I mean. Whenever it's coming up that we have to appoint somebody, have the breakdown so we can see it
thought-
And I
then.
believe the breakdown's already included in the green sheets as to
Us-
what district
correct.
did the original appointment.
Yep.
It might have the district number and not necessarily a district name.
Right.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Carl,
I just need
please.
clarification. So,
Thank you.
do you want a comprehensive list of where we stand right now across all committees and districts? Or do you want to wait until it's time to fill a vacancy? Just
Fred?
need clarification.
I think it would be helpful to have the whole thing, because you'll kind of get a feel for if we're pretty well in balance. And once we have that list, you're going to use it every time you do an appointment anyway, so.
I'm not clear on what we're doing. In other words,
In other words, like all the committees, every committee that we have.
Right.
We would have a list, and it would say what district each one's from that's on it. And then, like when we're doing LPA, you might find that District 6 is almost not on any committee. So you might give a little more emphasis to it if we have a qualified person.
Steve?
Qualification is.
I would
most
prefer, Mayor, that we just get, when the vacancy comes up, we get who's in what district then, and not the whole thing, because I'll probably put it in my file somewhere and not be able to find it, So let's not create more work for the city staff than is necessary. So I would just say, we got somebody coming up for the next meeting. That's all we need.
And I want to point out, we do this now for LPA and zoning. We do not do it for other committees, so Veteran Advisory Board or
Right.
other boards. I think it would be pretty much a Herculean task for the clerk to go through from every year and figure out when appointments were made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you could start from new, that would be good.
That's why I'm a little unclear.
Okay, the first thing, as I understand it, is that we're giving Audrey the direction that our goal is for those committees to have a representative from each district. That's number one. Number two, the vacancies that are coming up, all we need to know is what districts are, that are going to be vacant, and we vote on whoever that person is representing, whatever district is vacant.
And I think that's great. I think, though, with one caveat. We don't have to find out what person nominated somebody that's on the tree committee, but what's the harm in knowing the current tree committee, when it comes up for an appointment, what district each one of the persons is from? That's easy.
And we
Yeah, but I
can do
don't-
that. We can do that.
Yeah, I think we don't need to know who's on the tree committee to go find out who's on the to
No,
appoint somebody on the LPA.
No, right. I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, just whenever it comes up, who's on it, what district they're from, which district is vacant.
Who's on first?
Have we got it?
All right,
Got it.
so
We
I'm
think-
hearing we're doing this when vacancies come up.
Right.
Right.
Okay, very good.
You got it.
Fred?
Thank you.
You're happy?
Yep.
All right. Anything else? Any further discussion on this? Okay, is there a motion?
There was.
All right, and second, okay, roll call.
Councilman Gibson,
So the motion is, are we choosing one of these options, or are we just saying that we want the breakdown whenever we
Want the
vote
breakdown
on it?
when it's open.
I think it's what Carl
Okay.
said, and then I'm going to bring the administrative code back to you just for some revisions that staff is recommending. Now, recognize that the bulk of appointments, when there isn't an existing vacancy, do occur in November, December-ish time. We do it once a year rather
Yeah.
than try to do it all over the year.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor,
Everybody happy? Carl?
if I just have one more piece of information, just for council's consideration, not every one of our boards requires residency in Bonita Springs, especially if it's one of the more technical boards and you're looking for someone who has the technical qualifications, but you don't have residents applying. You know, you do have some boards that have people who live outside the city limits. Not a lot, but some.
Fred, anything further? Pete?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilman
Aye.
Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons. Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
All right. You got that, Fred?
Mr. Mayor,
All right, yes.
before we start, I'm going to excuse
Oh,
myself.
that's right,
if
that's
you don't
right.
mind.
Yes, he had an appointment this evening. I forget what it is.
Congratulations.
Right.
Honor
Oh,
Society.
that's right. His daughter's getting inducted into the National Honor Society. So, Councilman,
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Okay. Item 9, hold the public hearing to consider adoption of the following zoning resolution, and comment is limited to participants at the zoning board hearing on April 19th, 2016.
Mayor, are we doing mayor and council meeting?
Are you
Stuff
doing the
now.
other items?
Sorry?
It says mayor and council meeting, member items. You want to do that now? I mean,
We did those.
all those.
You have another time to do that on number 15.
that's
Oh,
just the
okay.
green sheet
I thought
part.
I missed that.
But thank you,
I missed
Steve.
it, yep.
Audrey?
Thank you. This is to hold a public hearing to consider the following zoning requests. I'm going to read the zoning resolution into the record and give you a slight history of the case, after which time the applicant will present the case, and afterwards Jennifer DeFola-Hagan will represent the staff position. This is a resolution of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, considering a request by D.R. Horton for a special exception to permit a model home in the agricultural AG2 zoning district on land located at 26760 Seville Avenue, Bonita Springs, Florida, on a lot approximately 9,363.25 more or less square feet, and providing for an effective date. This is a zoning resolution because it is a request for a special exception. It went to the zoning board on on April 19th, 2016. The location of the property is at, as I mentioned, 26760 Seville Avenue, which is in Sun Village Estates, and the special exception request is for a model home. At this time, present?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Stacy Hewitt with Bench Engineering. I'm representing the applicant. The request is for a special exception for a model home in the AG2 zoning district. The property is located at 26760 Seville Avenue in Sun Village Estates, and staff has put an aerial up on the screen. The highlighted lot, thank you, is the subject property. The subdivision is located just northeast of I-75 and East Terry Street. It's an old subdivision. It's a legal, non-conforming lot of record on Sun Village Estates, which was recorded in the official records in January of 1961. There was a minimum use determination for a single-family home that was issued in 1998 by Lee County, since the lot was created prior to the adoption of the DRGR in the Lee plan, or in the comprehensive plan. The single-family home is currently under construction. The request today is to allow the single-family home to have a special exception for a temporary use of a model home, which is limited to 3 years. The applicant is in agreement with the city staff report, which was dated March 31st, 2016, recommending approval, that's in the record. and the recommendation of approval from the City of Bonita Springs Board for Land Use Hearings and Adjustments and Zoning Board of Appeals on April 19th, 2016. The requested special exception meets or exceeds all the performance and location standards set forth for the proposed use. It's consistent with the goals, objectives, policies, and intent set forth in the City of Bonita Springs Comprehensive Plan. It's compatible with existing or planned uses in the surrounding area. It will not cause damage, hazard, nuisance, or other detriment to persons or property, and will be in compliance with all general zoning provisions and supplemental regulations pertaining to the use set forth in the LDC. We respectfully request that the request be approved, and I'm available for questions if you have any.
Okay. Thank you, counsel.
Thank
you. Do you want to hear from staff first, maybe?
Good evening. For the record, Jennifer Dufala-Hagen, planner with Community Developments, here tonight to hear the request for a special exception. Property has already been mentioned. Stacy's done a very good job outlining the request, so I'll go over it very quickly just to put it in the record. Nature of the request is, again, for a special exception to allow a model home within the neighborhood of and on the road of Seville Avenue. General location is east of 75, north of Terry, and west of Morton, and it's on Lot 21 of the Sun Village Estates. Again, you've seen the property location. Again, this is a request for a model home. That is going to be a single-family home used solely for the demonstration of purposes of sales or promotion of products within that neighborhood only. That is a condition of the recommendation of approval. And it's not available for sale or occupancy within the 3 years that we have conditioned the use to be, if you so approve it. Again, the background is you cannot have this use within a residential neighborhood without special exception. This is not a permitted use by right, so therefore it is to your discretion whether you want to allow this temporary use for a model home within that neighborhood. Again, the future land use of the property falls within the DRGR. The comp plan allows for a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. Therefore, a single-family residence would be permitted. Lee County did previously approve a MUD, a minimum use determination for a single-family home for this property back in ¡98, I believe it was. And that minimum use determination was allowed for 34 of the lots are eligible within this existing subdivision to have single-family homes. So again, the use is not in question of a single-family home. These 34 lots do have the minimum use determination to have single-family homes. The only request for you in front of you tonight is for this one specific home to have a temporary use of a model home for 3 years. Staff recommends approval of the request with the conditions outlined in the staff report as well as with your draft resolution. We are limiting the model home use to no more than 3 years from the date of the CO of the home, and that's the certificate of occupancy. We are conditioning additional parking to be provided, built, and permitted in accordance with the Land Development Code. The model home can only be used to sell the applicant's products that will be sold within that development only. So you will not be looking for something of a product that would be sold outside of Sun Village Estates. And the hours of operation for the sales office will be 9 through 7 p.m. Monday through Sunday. Again, you have in your packets the elevations of the house, and here's a quick site plan of where the parking will be. It will be on this south side of the lot on the north side of Melrose. There will be 3 spots here on Melrose and 2 spots, including 1 handicap in the driveway of the home. So again, once this use terminates within 3 years, this will be sold as a single-family residential home in compliance and compatibility with the rest of the surrounding neighborhood. So I am here for any questions you may have on the request.
Great, thank you. Counsel, Mike?
The extra parking, will that be removed when they go to sell the house?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so they have a maximum of 3 years of using this. What if they
Correct.
sold out all the houses prior to the 3 years? Could they sell this house then?
That would be a condition that you could add as counsel if that's something that you see fit. If the product has been sold out, then that would be something that potentially there would not be a reason for the sales facility to be there if it was sold out.
Steve?
Is there any community objection?
I'm not seeing any,
You
and there
can't-
was none at the neighborhood, I'm sorry, at the zoning board meeting neither.
Okay.
Amy, did you have anything?
I do have a question about the process of special exceptions. Is there a list from which one can choose to ask for a special exception from the zoning area that you're in? And if so, is this included in that list?
There's not necessarily a list of what you can choose. We have a use table for each of our zoning districts. Within that, set criteria of different uses are provided, whether they are permitted by right, whether they are existing only, or whether they fall under the special exception approval. So within that use table, this is one of those uses that's provided that does require special exception, which means that there's different circumstances or conditions that would be above and beyond a regulated permitted use. So those are here for your consideration, which would be a hybrid of a commercial use within a residential neighborhood for a temporary period.
This particular special exception is on the list already?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
that was
Yes,
my
for a model
question.
home.
Great. Pete?
Yeah, I have a question. From watching the zoning board, there was a discussion about section 41665 of the Land Development Code, and it has location and other standards in it. And B2 states, and I know, Jen, you were not at that meeting, so maybe Jay.
I was in attendance, but I'd be happy to.
But maybe Jay, I know, addressed this at that meeting. It has a provision that says model homes must be connected to water, sewer, and electricity. And I thought I heard you say at that meeting that sewer meant central sewer. Is that correct?
That would be the normal definition. There is some people who would disagree with that, but central sewer is what you would think of when our code says connected to sewer.
Right. So can we address that? I mean, the issue to me here is not, in effect, the issue is not the special exception as much as why is this here for a special exception if it conceivably doesn't meet the location standards which require arguably essential sewer?
I'll try to address this, and Audrey will probably jump in. Who you
Let me
want to go
give
first?
you the background of what happened, as I recall, during
Right.
the zoning board. Zoning board member Jim Worcester brought up a motion to deny from that, and that was one of the bases is for his denial, was it did not meet the locational standards requirement because sewer was not provided. And the zoning board did not agree with him. He was in the minority viewpoint.
Yeah, but my question is, are we, if the law of the city of Bonita Springs requires essential sewer, is anybody, including the zoning board or including this council, free to grant a special exception when it doesn't meet that standard? In other words, that's my question is.
Yes, you could face a challenge, a writ of certiorari, that if council voted for the special exception, there is always the possibility that somebody, even somebody who did not attend the hearing, could file a writ of certiorari that we departed from our regulations.
Yeah, I'm not asking about a challenge, I'm talking about rule of law. In other words, if the law of the city is that model homes must be connected to a sewer, and a sewer means central sewer, how can we be asked to violate that law as a council? Now, if you're of a different opinion, that's different, but that's the opinion I heard below. I mean, the opinion I heard below was what Jay repeated here when you asked him the question. It had nothing to do with what's Jim Worcester. It's a legal question.
I think what I heard was that the planners have a difference of opinion. Some planners feel that the word sewer was used generically for connection to any type of solid waste system, and others felt
I didn't
differently.
hear that below.
Oh.
So I'd like to hear both sides of it.
Good evening.
Good evening, John.
John Dolmer. I think that what Jay started off with was the correct interpretation in terms of why this is before you.
Right.
When you look at whether this is a rule of law that we must follow and therefore why is it here, you have to connect dots. And because those dots have to be connected and there is no direct statement that says the connection to sewer must be central sewer, That is why this request is before you. I think that this could be a matter of interpretation that I believe this council can make, that we believe that that statement should say, or does say, that it is central sewer. However, because the rule does not specifically exclude the possibility of a septic system, that is why we are here. And it did not specifically exclude this application.
Does the applicant have a view on this?
Again, for the record, Stacy Hewitt. Yes, we have always viewed this requirement as sewer, meaning either a septic system or the central sewer lines. And if central sewer lines were adjacent to the development or to the lot, it would be required to connect. But since there is no facilities in the location, it is not required to connect, is the way our interpretation has always been of this code. Additionally, if it was required to connect, there would need to be a pump station installed and connection for only this lot, which is not financially feasible.
Yeah, and I'm not addressing that issue at all.
Right.
All right, I mean, you're talking about an issue of whether you need to connect. I'm talking about the definition of model home. And what I'm suggesting is the model home says it must be connected to sewer, and the only opinion I heard staff give below was that means central sewer. I understand there's this other issue, but that's unrelated to this model
Right.
home application.
I understand.
Yeah.
And my interpretation on cases in other jurisdictions is that the requirement to be connected to water, sewer, and electricity, that is also allowed by potable well and for septic systems. That's been my understanding and interpretation of this requirement in the past on other issues. So that's my professional opinion, is that it is referring to either septic or central sewer system.
So we have a kind of a split here, right? We have staff below opined that it was central sewer. What I hear today is staff is saying some people might think otherwise. To me, it's a legal issue as to what those words mean. And I'd like to see a legal opinion on it. And because it relates to whether or not this is properly meets the location standard.
Correct. And if I may,
Yeah.
the staff report and, all of those issues were reviewed as part of the application, and staff agreed with us at that point that it did meet the locational standards.
I don't see any deliberative statements in here. I haven't read the whole thing, Audrey, but I don't see any deliberative statements addressing the legal issue of whether or not sewer means what staff opined at the last meeting, central sewer or not.
And I need to find, I did receive something from Mike Fegon before the hearing, because again, I felt that it's not a legal interpretation. I thought it was, because when you look at interpretation of the code and when you look at the community development or the zoning code, it says you go to the planners. Now, the planners can do it in consultation with the attorney, and I did have, I'm looking for the email I wrote him on this subject matter, but it'd take me a few moments to find it. It's but I did not see it as a legal opinion per se, whether sewer was intended to only be strictly a sanitary sewer system connected, or if it was a more generic use, like some people use the word hydro for electricity.
Well, Jen, did you have something to say? No? All right.
Just at the clarification that the use ultimately is a single-family home.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that goes without saying, so.
Jay?
I'll offer more confusion probably than clarification. Our code, our land development code requires all new developments connect to central water and sewer. We don't allow a development to come in that's not connected. That's part of all new developments. We have a situation here where we have a development that was a sales map in the 60s, and they sold people's lots. Lee County adopted platting codes and zoning codes later in the 70s and 80s, and of course, these got grandfathered in. And then Lee County, in order not to get sued, issued a minimum use determination that you could have one house in each of these lots. For whatever reason, Lee County sometime in 2005 approved a limited development order allowing, I think it was Mano Christian at the time who owned the properties, to go in and pave the roads and put in a central water system, and didn't require them to put in sewer. Now, people will tell you different stories. There are certain facts, and the facts are that in theory, they should have been able to put a well and a septic tank and build with a minimum use determination. Facts are that they couldn't do that because the lots aren't big enough to get the separation requirements from the wells to the septic systems, and so something had to give. Mano Christian put in a central water system. So now the prohibition of development was met because you didn't have to worry about a well being contaminated by a sanitary sewer system. There's where we are. Our code, I believe our code is very clear that if you're doing new development in the city, that you are to be connected to a central water and central sewer system. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, getting back to this, and I think this is where Audrey and where the applicant have, and I understand your point, it's a point of law, but their argument is that, you know what, we're developing a corridor, we're over here, we can just run people back and put more traffic on the road and show them the model and sell the homes. And they've made that statement to us. Is it better for that to happen or to allow the model home on a septic system to exist so that the traffic is less in the neighborhood? That's really their argument, although that no one has really said that directly. But I think that you're absolutely right. Our code does address that everything new is to be on a centralized system.
Well, no, you might be missing my point. I know there are other issues relating to this, relating to the history. My point has nothing to do with any of that.
You're just looking at the...
I'm looking at the definition of model home. And the definition, once again, the definition of model home says it has to be connected to a sewer. That's all. I'm not in any way implicating anything else to do with this project.
And I think the reason for that comment in the code, and let me just talk about the code a little bit for a second. In days past, even though developers were putting in centralized water and system, they would want to put in a model, and they would call it a dry model or a prairie home, so that they could start sales. And one of the things our code says, no, if it's going to be a model, and people are actually going to be sitting in there, and the lights are going to be on, you got to be connected to water and sewer, and
central sewer,
central water, central sewer. But the reason that condition was in there so that somebody wasn't coming out and building a prairie home or a dry model.
Can I ask one?
Fred, yes.
Yeah, real simple question. In the land development code, there's surely definitions. Is the word sewer defined?
I have no idea. Let me check real quick. We do have sewer, hold on. In Chapter 7, we have sewer use regulations, and I believe it'd probably be defined in the mandatory sewer connection ordinance. So we have a definition for availability, and we have a definition for an on-site sewage disposal system, which we usually call a septic tank, but interesting. I do not know if we have one or not. John? But let me just, can I raise a point, whether it's defined or not? I just want to raise one point, and let me get to the section I need to be at. There we go. The section, it's not within the definition sections, but it is within location requirements for model homes. And model homes are, in subsection A, sometimes they can be approved administratively by staff. Other times they have to go to council. And the language where it has to go to council states, after a public hearing, may approve the location of individual model homes and model units in existing developments. And here's the next part: provided the provisions of this division, which is an ordinance, is met. And then the next section is subsection B, which then goes into what are the provisions that have to be met. And one is it has to be located on a single lot in accordance with the development order, that no issues there. Model homes are permitted in any townhouse or multifamily district. Then the second one is model homes must be connected to water, sewer, and electricity and must receive a certificate of occupancy as a model home only prior to use as a model. In other words, you can't have people living in there while also
Right.
using as a model. And then model homes may be approved only in areas where they will not be adversely affecting existing residences. Now, I would say that council is restricted to following the provisions of this section, and that section does say water, sewer, electricity. It's interesting because the next section, which is display homes, specifically says you're not allowed to connect to the sewer system. So it's just, this is what it is. I
Well,
mean,
that's
it says
interesting. So
sewer.
there's an implication there that sewer means the sewer system then. But rather than prolong this, in fairness to the applicant, I think it would be helpful to get a legal opinion as to what this means. I mean, this is, the word appears there, model homes must be connected to a sewer. And rather than sit here responsively and try to figure that out, I'm just going on what I heard staff say at the last meeting, and it made sense to me. But, sorry, Rick. Rick?
Rick? Can, in a moment, give it a moment here, we're having a discussion, thank you.
So my suggestion is the applicant and the city be given an opportunity to opine what this means in this context, lest we be asked to do something that's illegal.
Would you like to continue it for 2 weeks after you have public comment at this time?
Well, that would be my suggestion. But Mike?
Well, that was I was just going to say, is the question, are we able to rule on this? Basically saying that yes to breaking the law was my only thing. So.
Further discussion? Amy?
I don't know if this is relevant to this hearing or this discussion, but I'm curious, if this were not a model home, but just a single-family home, in fact, all those 34 potential homes, would they be required to be put on a septic system, a central sewer system? That's my first question.
At this time, the answer is no. And that's because we do have a mandatory sewer connection, but it is not required for single-family residences. If it was part of a large development, it would be required to.
We have a specific section that designates when central systems need to be installed and when they do not need to be installed. And there are specific exceptions for those. Because the history that was given to you earlier created these lots prior to those regulations being in place. These particular lots, and I'm going to take this lot as well as those other lots that are included in the subdivision, do not need to be connected. The item here, and I think this is within council's purview, is how is that section of the code to be interpreted? I think that is a policy decision, and I have no problems with providing additional information so you can then make that decision as to what you think your policy should be.
Well,
but
John, I just want to say, I think it's a legal decision, all right? In other words, we need to be told as a matter of law what this means.
But we could also make it a policy, this is where I'm getting to, we could make it a policy decision that we're interpreting that in that way, or?
Yes.
And we could do it at this time, even though we have a proposal before us?
Yes, and let me go through.
And then one more question. Could we just say we'll accept this as long as they connect to the central sewer system?
And
yes.
Okay, all right.
Well,
John,
that is not what they're wanting.
I know,
but
but
yes,
I just
you
want
have
to
the
be
ability to
clear
condition.
what we're talking about here, and I do support Peter O'Flynn's notion that we should at least clarify, but it seems to be that whether it does legally point to a central sewer system or not, we could still be in a position where we could say we, as a policy, are deciding that it should be connected to a central sewer system. And this dovetails with some other things that we're going to talk about, this policy of connection anyway. So we maybe should wait anyway until we figure out what we want to do with that other policy.
well, and let me just point out, there is case law in Florida that if the sewer is not available, you can't deny a single-family residence. Model home's different, but a single-family residence, you cannot deny it on the basis that there's no sewer availability when they can hook up to septic. So that's been decided under Florida law.
But
That I can give an
if we
opinion.
require the model to have it, then it will be available to these other 13, so that other 34 or 33 or whatever. right?
As long as they decide to continue with the
Right.
model and not discontinue with the application.
Yes, sir.
I'm Wayne Everett. I'm with D.R. Horton, and I understand the concern on the law, but I just wanted to point out that we currently have 19 permits, homes under construction. There's another 5 in review right now. We have all 34 septic permits from the Florida Department of Health. If you elect to deny this use, it really, the timing will not work, so we would have to sell from somewhere else, and all of the homes would be built before sewer could even be brought to the community. The very best situation, it's 18 months to get sewer there. We will be sold out of this community in 12 months.
I hope you understand my concern has nothing to do with everything else you're doing. I'm just focusing on a definition of model home.
Correct. Understood. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mike?
The special exception, is that not where we're going against what is written in our rules?
A special exception, you have a standard of review in order to decide it. You can look in the zoning resolution as well as the staff report, where it provides a special exception must meet or exceed the performance and locational standards. So I think what you're asking is whether or not it meets the locational standards, consistent with your goals, objective policies of the comp plan, compatible with existing or planned uses, not cause damage, hazard, nuisance, or detriment to persons or other property, and be in compliance with all general zoning provisions and supplemental regulations pertaining to the use set forth in the Land Development Code. So I think it's up to council to make that determination, whether it meets that finding or
I
not.
think I'll say it one more time. My question is whether it's a model home as contemplated under the special exception rule, and in effect, if it's not on central sewer, how can it possibly be a model home as contemplated by that? That's a legal question.
That I can answer. It's a model home. It's not a speculative home. So, I mean, there's different types of structures. So the use in the zoning would be contemplated as a model home. And there are locational standards, and B does say water, sewer, and electricity.
Right.
Community development staff, as well as the applicant, made an interpretation prior to the hearing that it met the locational standards.
All right, well, let me ask a question. Can anyone on staff give a deliberative explanation based on the Land Development Code why the word sewer means something? I mean, that's not in the record. I think we've established that, all right? So I don't like holding up the applicant for a week or two, but I think the sensible thing for due process for the applicant is for them to come forward with their best argument as to why this is a sewer means a septic system under this, and for staff to express its view today. I don't know how possibly we can do it tonight, because it's a matter of what the law of this code is.
I mean, it's our determination that sewer is any of those things, septic or central sewer. I mean, Lehigh Acres, Cape Coral, there's so many areas that have septic system requirements because they do not have the sewer. We've built in many of those communities, had model homes in those communities that are on septic systems. I mean, so that's.
I think you see my point, huh?
I just think sewer is a very generic term.
Well, that's the question of what the code is.
And
in
if I
Bonita.
may, we have a definition for sewage system. Is that close enough?
I'd rather not sit here responsibly reading the law, and I mean, let's get a legal opinion from both you and a deliberative legal opinion as to what this means. That's all. Thank you.
So continue for 2 weeks?
As far
That's
as
going to
I'm
be
concerned.
okay?
Yeah.
I mean, timeline, okay.
Any further discussion?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I would move to do that. 2 weeks.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll
Audrey,
second.
okay?
Yes.
Okay?
I'll
Yes,
second it
Mr.
so we can
Steinmeier's the
have a
Yes,
motion.
yeah, no, absolutely, okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? Okay. Public comment.
Okay, well, we approve this, and he's got 34 lots. He's going to build for 34 homes with septic systems, because you can't deny him the septic systems. You can't deny his building because sewer's not available. My compromise would be if he sells 5 lots, that he pays the utility company to bring central sewer system into the project. The compromise. It costs, otherwise you're going to have 34 homes with no septic system.
Anybody else from the public? And have they spoken? Did you speak at zoning?
No.
Anybody else that spoke at zoning? Okay, roll call, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I ask who seconded that motion?
I did.
Thank you.
I didn't hear
Did you second it, Fred?
I did.
Councilman Forbes?
We both
Forbes.
I second it, yeah.
Councilwoman Caramba?
did. Aye.
Councilman Slakta?
No.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye. Okay. Moving along to item 10, the first reading and public hearing of the following ordinance, and public comment is allowed here. Audrey, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, items A and B. Audrey Vance.
Okay, so the first one's an amendment to Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 4, amending Section 4-227, public participation, allowing public participation at council zoning hearings, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, inclusion of code, and effective date. This is the first reading of an ordinance. It is a land development regulation, so public comment, as you mentioned, is allowed. The ordinance will be scheduled for May 18th for the second hearing, and with LPA reviewing the ordinance next Thursday, May 12th, 2016, at 9 a.m. in these chambers to make sure it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I do want to point out that I did discover recently that there are some other provisions that talk about participation at public hearings, so you will see a slightly revised amendment the next time we come forward, and what will be amended is the conflicts of law provision. So instead, it'll still have the most restrictive shall apply, but it will also say anything within the Bonita Springs Land Development Code that talks to the contrary, you should treat it as repealed. A little better verbiage than that, but it's very close on the mark to what I just stated. At this time, if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. Council, questions? Okay. Is there a motion?
Make the motion.
I'm sorry, public comment. I apologize. Public comment. Hi, Barbara.
Hi there. You'll probably not be surprised that I'm going to comment. I think you all know that when we attempted to speak at the February...
And I'm sorry, your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. Barbara Craig.
Thank you.
When we attempted to speak at the public hearing on February 3rd, because only 5 of us had been able to get to the hearing in December, on December 15th, which I noted I was in the hospital on the day of, and that was why I was not there. It was quite frustrating, and there seemed no reason for that. It's not the norm in other areas, and I know that they like to say that this is a quasi-judicial hearing below, but I've just heard something that I found kind of interesting, and I'd love an interpretation of this, and that is that the zoning board is an advisory board, and it's voluntary. How could an advisory board make quasi-judicial decisions like fact-finding and decisions on the record? So I think there is some confusion about that anyway, but I think this is a very positive step, and I urge you to support it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Rick?
Yes, Rick Steinmeier. I've always had a problem when I wanted to call my county commissioner and make a comment about some zoning issues, and I couldn't talk to him. I mean, why do we hire these people to represent us if we can't communicate with them? I certainly would like to open up communications on the zoning issues as best as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Anybody else from the public? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Caramba?
Aye.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Okay, Audrey, item B.
I believe I'm giving it over to, oh, I'm sorry, this is first reading of the following ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs electing into the applicability provision of the Lee County Ordinance Number 16-04 pertaining to human trafficking, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, inclusion in code, and effective date. This is the first reading of the ordinance. The ordinance has not been advertised at this point. It will be advertised before your May 18th, 2016 meeting for a second reading and final council public hearing. It is required under Florida Statute Section 166.041 to do a first reading prior to advertisement.
Okay. Council, discussion?
I support and move the motion.
Okay, there's a
I'll
motion. Is
second.
there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Okay, any further council discussion before we go to public comment? Any public comment? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item 11, second reading and public hearing of the following ordinance. Public comment is allowed as well. Audrey?
And I'll take this one.
I
Good
apologize.
evening.
Thank you.
Alex Boswell.
How you doing,
Eversole,
Audrey?
For the record, good.
Great, Al.
This is a second reading and public hearing of the following ordinance, an amendment to Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 3, amending Article 4, Design Standards and Guidelines for Commercial Buildings and Developments by adding Section 3-498 to prohibit certain architectural lighting, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, inclusion in code, and an effective date and amortization. I have reviewed the affidavit of publication and found it legally sufficient. As you may recall, and as it's referred to in the title block, this is basically an ordinance that adds a provision that prohibits certain architectural lighting that's associated with buildings, and these would be commercial buildings. The LPA did find it consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the last thing I'll mention is that there is a 60-day amortization period, so any lights not in compliance will have to come into compliance within 60 days of the effective date of the ordinance.
Okay. Council, anything? Okay, public comment. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Take your pick there. And roll call.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Okay, great. Moving on to item 12, public comment. The public, any comment on any item at all?
Rudy.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. I rise before you tonight as a private citizen. I know you sometimes see me in another function.
And your name for the record.
My name is Rudy Vruchtman. I'm a resident of
Thank you, Rudy.
downtown Bonita Springs, Pullen Avenue. You also know that I'm somewhat of an advocate for small business in the state of Florida. And the other day, a few of us were sitting around and came up with a crazy idea without inappropriate interpretation. Sometimes doing business with a government entity like a city is not the easiest thing for a small business. There are rules, there are regulations, there are sometimes situations where lowest bid is required, sometimes best value is required, and all of those things. And we understand the need for that. However, it doesn't make sense to some of us. If a city like Bonita Springs, other governmental organizations, accepts a bid that is a few dollars, a few percentages lower, just because it is a few percentage lower, when the next best bid might be one of our citizens just down the street, a local business, a local entity with local employees, local taxpayers, and 2, 3, 4% might keep that business local. So I'd like to challenge you, if that's the proper term. I would like you to consider reviewing the regulations on purchasing by the city of Bonita Springs, and hopefully we can then broaden that in this state to see if we can set up a process where if there is a small differential in the bid or the contract offer, that we can allocate that to a local business entity, however we define it. I'm thinking along the line of some government programs where we give preference to minority businesses, veterans businesses, and situations like that. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, we do have local preference laws in our purchasing procedures.
Right. Thank you. Kathy, hello.
Good evening. Good evening. Let me lighten things up a little. A few comments on Wonder Gardens. I'm not on the board, and I am a volunteer, and I'm proud to say I joined as a founding member, which gives me some kind of a title, I don't know. But what I wanted to tell you is I have contributed. I'm not one of the major donors, as you know there have been, but when things were tough about 6 months ago, like the bird enclosures, they really needed help, and I was glad to do it. But anyhow, I want to talk about Picasso, because I want you to know that I now have Picasso eating popcorn out of my hand. But I could never get him to show his beautiful plume. Well, last Saturday, believe it or not, it's time for the 3rd annual Film Fest, and we had our committee meeting there. And he was yelling up a storm. I guess he was looking for his girlfriend, and I looked, and there he was in all his glory. And I mean, he pranced around there for about 15 minutes. But I think he had ulterior motives, as sometimes the males do. I believe he was, you know, looking for Priscilla. The other funny thing about him is I'm told he was raised with chickens. So if you want to find him, go over to the chicken enclosure, because I think he thinks he's a chicken. But I do want to tell you, the Film Fest committee did have our first meeting for this 3rd annual one. The gala will be November the 3rd at the Prado. We have learned over 3 years we make a few more improvements each time. I think everyone's going to be very happy. And the other thing quickly I want to mention is I had to leave 2 weeks ago because I had to attend the luncheon honoring Terry LeMaine, so I couldn't get to say anything about Celebrate Bonita, and I just have to. Y'all were there, you saw it. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. There was something for everybody, entertainment for everybody. All I heard were positive things and saw happy, smiling faces. So that was very, very exciting. And thank you all for coming. And Wonder Gardens, go there. I mean, it is just what they have done. The staff is helpful, friendly, knowledgeable. It's such a difference. It's just a joy, and we've got to save it.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else from the public? Public comment? Okay. When that storm went out. Yeah. All right, moving on to City Attorney's report, please. Audrey Vance.
Thank you.
Items A through D.
Yes, so the first thing, we're going back to the word sewer. Just to make my life more fun. And what I brought up, Councilmember O'Flynn at the April 20th meeting brought up the issue that BSU has done a great job in removing a lot of the septic systems that are internal to City of Bonita Springs. But there still are some areas that are under septic. Some areas will also probably, due to low density and what we call cap rock, physically it would be almost virtually impossible to place sewers in that location. But there's different locations, and that we may want to upgrade our ordinance to require more connections to the sanitary sewer system, particularly in the DRGR area. Because we have what we call lots of record, and we heard about one area, Sun Village Estates, but that's not the only area. There's about 3 targeted areas, or 3 areas in which we would take care of. We have a definition for available, if the sewer system is actually available. And this was the property we had heard about recently was in one of these areas where it did not meet the definition of available. And so we talked about possibly making changes to the definition of available. At this time, I want to work with BSU to explore further. I don't want to come back and say, oh, I got this done, I know how to do it. Because once I started researching, I found more complications when researching it because of the fact that we have a franchise. There may be special connection charge issues. We may have to amend the franchise. For tariff differences, we may need to explore a couple different things. So at this time, I'm just asking for permission to work with BSU, and I wanted you to know I did look at it, came back, and said, boy, this looks a lot harder than I thought. So if it's okay, I do want to work on that.
The only point of correction I would want to make is, I did not say particularly in the DRGR. I think another council member might have, but I
Okay.
wanted that to be clear.
I'm sorry.
Can I?
Council Fred.
Well, I would like to do one more thing, and that is the septic tank is the issue here. And I think that any septic tanks that go out in the DRGR, we should have a extra requirement that says it's got to be built way above the ground, the whole leaching field. That's what they do up north, and that way when you have a lot of water standing there, it's still going to function correctly. So I think that we ought to do the sewer thing first and hit the septic tank next, because there are septic tanks still obviously being put in out there.
And there is a Florida Administrative Code for Engineers that is huge on the subject, and I have to say, I do not know the answer.
Right.
Yeah, but you're talking about the field, the drainage field?
Where the field would be elevated above the, where the water, say, top of the water stands in
Right.
in the rainy season.
And I'm pretty sure there are standards, whether or not we're allowed to increase the standards.
Well, I would think
have
it'd
to
be like
research.
anything else, that we can increase the standard of a local code. At least we ought to look into it anyway.
Council?
No, I just noticed we're represented, well represented by BSU. Anything that they would want to say about this?
John?
Good evening, council members. John Jenkins with Bonita Springs Utilities. I could fill in a little bit here for you. With regard, I mean, we've been talking about this Sun Village project tonight. That's an area just north of Terry Street on the east side of 75, between Morton and 75. That was looked at for as part of BSU's gravity expansion system years ago. It was lower down on the list of priorities because it was farther away from the Imperial River and generally was less of environmental impact. Also, there was not a whole lot of development out there at the time, and from our standpoint, to extend sewer and collect a charge which was specifically paid by the property owners out there, there would be a lot of pipe going in and not that many property owners to pay. And finally, at one time, the city's housing authority was looking at that as some low-income housing out there. So in those circumstances, you don't necessarily want to include an extra cost of central sewer. So this kind of hit us by surprise along with everybody else when D.R. Horton went in there to start this development. They were not required to put in central sewer, which we would typically see and that you commonly see around here. We checked with your staff, and Mr. Dahmer confirmed for us what he told you. I actually requested a meeting with D.R. Horton, and it was attended by Mr. Everett, to say, what can we do to get sewer out there? Even if we can't require it, can we make it economically desirable for you? And frankly, we were told no, they were moving ahead too quickly, and that they would not be interested in striking a deal to put central sewer out there. We had told them that the time frame for us to do it was close to 9 months. So I'm not sure where the 18 months time frame came in. We had talked about 9 months. As far as the DRGR in the future goes, there are about 140 lots in the Sun Village and other areas directly related to Sun Village, just north and south. There's some areas south of Terry Street on that same side of I-75, Rutapa and Sans Souci and some places near the Y. That might be a target for central sewer that we might look at down the road. Other than that, the density is not sufficient out there, and the environmental impact of isolated septic tanks on large lots probably doesn't warrant central sewer out there, but we'd be happy to work with Audrey if there's some protection that can be built into the code to prevent a situation like we have in Sun Village from occurring elsewhere out. We'd be willing to look into that and try and determine what could be done. As far as the rest of the city goes, there are only a few isolated areas. We met with Mr. Forbes, our new liaison, earlier in the week and went over some of that information. And there may be some opportunities to replace septic tanks in some of those areas in the future. Others, probably not. For the most part, though, a lot of that legwork's been done, and anything that would occur in the future would be new development that would require central sewer. I think that's really all I had to try and share with you all this evening.
Thank you, John. Any Fred?
Well, one question. There's a number of homes that are out there already. How many total? They're all on relatively small lots. I'm presuming they're all on septic tank. How many homes with the Horton homes and all that are out there now, roughly?
The only information I have for you tonight is that there are approximately 140 homes in that area, the Sun Village area, and just north and just south of there, that we would have considered a good candidate for putting in central sewer. Beyond that, in terms of what's out in the DRG, we do have sewer over there in some areas right off of Morton Street, but I can't tell you how many other units are out there.
Yeah, I just would love to see that area have sewers because it is in the DRG.
And I need to point out, while BSU has a central sewer system, there is another provider for Bellevilla and Citrus Park.
Yes.
So that's under a different system.
Right. I understand that.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Okay, council. Any further discussion?
No, just a quick comment. Earlier today, we have an obligation of $4 million because of too much nitrogen. We can thank BSU for everything they've done over the last 40 years that it's not higher.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
So I will just continue to
Go
work
ahead.
with BSU.
Continue.
Right.
Yeah, continue. Do we need a motion for that?
I think
Just direction.
consensus is fine.
Direction?
I think I received direction.
Okay, very good.
No one said don't do it, so
Yeah.
I'm going to assume I'm supposed to do it. The next one is to review an ordinance that was drafted. It's amending 12-33, which is related to construction contractors registration. The city currently charges a fee of a whopping $10 for 2 years if you are, being a little sarcastic, if you are a registered or licensed contractor with the state of Florida or with Lee County. And then if you are a licensed with just Lee County, it's $10 per year. And by having registered, we know that the contractors in this area have gone through testing we agree with. For example, we don't apply reciprocity with Collier County contractors, and I believe that the building official can explain why if you need to know. The state of Florida, in one of their many laws that they pass, as Carol did today, they made some changes to the Florida building code, and one of the changes was to preempt the city from being allowed to charge any kind of registration fee. Now, because of the high fee that we charge, we will be losing revenue in approximately the amount of $6,000 a year. So, just so you know how much it is. It's not a land development code ordinance, so when I do the amendments, at least it calls for a less expensive advertisement. Sorry, I'm punchy tonight. But I am asking permission to advertise, and I'll advertise it so we meet the code effective July 1, and first reading would be on May 18th, and the second reading on June 1st.
We have no choice.
It's an unfunded mandate. If we
Right.
have it in the
Okay.
ordinance and we try to enforce it, we have bigger problems.
Okay. I would move that.
Second.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
You're up again, Audrey?
I am. Okay. The next item is to talk, Councilmember Forbes, during the April 20th meeting, brought up questions as to what can be asked from persons. It was one of those things I did not feel comfortable answering without looking at the statute. Have since looked at the statute. We should not make any changes, obviously contrary to the state statute on public participation, such as trying to invoke a residency requirement. We have and Debbie provided me today with a copy of the actual thing that the citizens received the form, and it says anything you provide on it is optional. We like to have names so we know what to call the person. Saying "Hey you" is probably not appropriate, but they're told or informed it's all in optional when they do fill out that form. We do have an oral statement in the code, in our code, that says you have to state your address when you go up there, your name and address. We could delete that. You can require name. I don't think you can require address. But I don't think that's a big deal. If somebody doesn't give their address, I don't know if I've ever heard council demand of it. So that's basically it. Any questions?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I'm not clear why you're saying we can't ask for a name and address. I know the law says, doesn't have that specifically in there. I don't know why you wouldn't read reasonableness into it. Yeah.
And I read reasonableness as to the
Right.
name. I think the address, if you're trying to do a residency requirement, a relevancy.
No, just an identification.
Well, right now we have, our code says that, and
Okay.
nobody's asked any questions one way or another.
So I would leave it.
You don't need to change the code.
Yeah. Yeah.
that would-
Personally, I would leave it.
Yeah, I concur.
And then the only other thing is when council last looked at this issue with the statute, you could adopt a representative. In other words, if you had a room of 150 people, you could say, or, the
Right.
room is overflowing, you could require just representatives. Council said no, they did
Right.
not want to do
Right.
that. So if you want to do that, you can do it. I don't think, based on statements that council has said, that you want to do it, but I just want to let you know it's
It's
out
kind of
there.
rule of reason, right, in
Mhm.
application, is the way it's worked.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that makes things always work better.
Yeah.
So what is the, what are we agreeing on?
At this point, this is informational. We have an existing code. I went
Leave it.
through, provided you with a copy of the code. I would not make any changes to the code, which is fine. But, I guess if you were going to demand that the people only were residents of Bonita Springs, if they were going to be allowed to talk, that's where you start running afoul.
And I believe that one of the reasons was that there were issues that people like from Naples would get up and speak, and we didn't know that they were from Naples, and they were trying to
Right.
convince the council people to vote a particular way. So in those cases, I think that's interesting to keep, but.
You'll always have people come up from different jurisdictions if they feel strongly on an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the issue is that if they don't say where they're from, we can at least say, where are you from? Where do you live? That doesn't mean that they can't speak, but I think council would want to know if they're not from Bonita Springs.
I mean, I think that's a reasonable question
Yeah,
to ask
right.
any person.
So
up
we're going to
there.
leave it the way it is?
Right, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Next is Alex prepared a flow chart. This is another thing that was brought up at one of your earlier council meetings. It feels like a long time ago, but it's less than a month. April 6th, when council met, they had a question, or they started talking about the LPA discussion and when we intervene them in the chart. The flow chart is actually a good representation of what the ordinance advertisement requirements are. It doesn't interject the LPA in it, but that's because this is for the general rule on any ordinances, not necessarily land development regulation. We, based on the direction I got from council in the last two meetings, we will take it to the LPA first, then we'll ask for permission to advertise after it goes to the LPA unless there's extenuating circumstances. I think this is one where it is just, I don't like to necessarily always have rules when we have a specific path
by a statute and having more additional rules, because then that leaves us open to additional challenges on those new additional rules when council decides to deviate from it. So in this circumstance, I'd say leave everything as is. We can change the flow chart if you want to show the LPA or interject where the LPA has to go into it. And I did want to point out, this is just the general rule, the flow chart. There are other ordinances, annexation, community development districts, development agreements, that all have different advertising requirements based on their statutes. But this is like the good old general to at least get you guys started on what exactly is the rules for ordinance adoption.
Okay.
You have
Great.
any questions?
Council?
Looks good.
Great, thanks, Audrey. City managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item, A, is this is kind of flows from our workshop that we had earlier. We were not able to complete the exercise there, and I don't know, given the time and what you've already been through tonight, whether you want to pick this up again, but I think we had just a few items left on the public works side, and then we had the items on the Parks and Recreation side to go through, and was wondering if the council wanted to take back up the process that was being led by Councilmember O'Flynn with regards to looking at those major yellow numbers and determining whether or not they wanted to, if you wanted to move those numbers. I didn't know if you wanted to do that, take that up now, or take it up at another time.
Take it up at another time.
I'd like to take it up at another time.
Another time, is that okay? Okay,
All
another
right.
time.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Carl.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, Carl. I thought we were through with the one list. No?
Well, I just didn't maybe I missed.
Okay.
Like items, there were the first few small items on the public works
All right,
list.
well, we can
Because
talk
we
about
worked backwards, but I'm not sure what we
All right,
ended
we
up
can
on
talk
those.
later then.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
great. All right.
Mayor, if I could make a comment,
Yes,
Anne Marie,
please,
Finance
Ann.
Director. There is an item on the agenda, item D, under the city manager's report, and if that item is approved, is also approving a budget transfer, and that would reduce the one amount that you had identified for the paving unpaved roads by that amount, if that resolution is approved. Thank
Okay,
you.
great, thank you.
Okay, item B. A number of cities and the counties in the area take off for about a month during the summer. The city of Bonita Springs has not done that in the past. However, given the new makeup of the council, staff just wanted to know whether or not the council was interested in trying to take off a month during the summer. What it really would equate to would be canceling one council meeting. Given the schedule of some of you, I just randomly thought if you were of a mind to do that, August 3rd might be one you want to take a look at. Also, given the fact that you're going to be running 3 meetings in July, given the budget workshop as well as 2 council meetings. So just wanted to kind of get your feel as to what you wanted to do and go for council discussion on that.
Yeah, Carl and I had brought that up to you initially, and we were able to work through that, you know, get the budget schedule. So in other words, we wouldn't have to be here for the entire month of July. And you were graciously, we worked through that with our budget schedule, and council approved that. So I really don't see a need to take off for that meeting because we did work that out based on, you know, the budget. So I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I don't think we need to.
And most likely, I'm going to miss both in September, so I mean, and we can't all plan vacations at the same time, so I would just say keep all the meetings there, and we're going to miss them when we miss them.
Yeah,
So.
I'm fine with that, too.
I would agree.
So just continue then. the
Well,
way
I think
we're
just
going.
continue, great. And thanks for working with me on the budget meetings in July. Thank you very much.
Sure. Item C, I'm going to let Arlene handle. Arlene?
Okay. Arlene,
Good
hello.
evening, Arlene Hunter for the record. What you have before you is a request authorizing staff to forward information to the Department of Human Services for the CDBG program. We have an agreement with the Lee County through Resolution 130625, and there is a schedule of when appropriate times for us to forward them information. By May 1st, we are to identify the type of project that we'd be looking to do for the 2016-2017 fiscal year. Additionally, these are 3-year agreements, resolutions, so we will also be coming to you before the end of the year for a renewal of our agreement with the Lee County. Right now, what they're looking at is a total allocation of approximately $294,000 that would be eligible to expend as funds. We included in your packet a map of eligible locations within the city where projects can be identified. We at this time do not have to identify the exact project. And what we'd like to do is have the opportunity to have our report on May 18th by Tool Design Group, continuing working with McMahon as well, and try to come up with a concept of our project by the August 1st deadline. What this letter lays out is that we would be asking that the project be identified as infrastructure. We did include in your packet all of the other eligible uses for the project. Your staff is recommending, because of the prioritization list, and most recently provided on Tuesday to us as well, that infrastructure is the top concern, as well as transportation. We did verify that funding can be used for right-of-way, pathways, multimodal uses, sidewalks. The requirement, though, is that it does benefit low to moderate income residents. It cannot be used as a benefit to commercial properties. I did discuss preliminary ideas about looking at the northwest intersection of Bonita Beach Road and 41, looking at interconnectivity roadways. If we were to present it as a benefit to the residents of that community, providing them bike path, walkways through that community, it would be an eligible project. So as you see, there is a draft letter that staff prepared for you, and that is what the city manager would be signing and forwarding to Lee County. They had asked us to look at prioritizing on the map locations of interest. And as staff looked, of course, we felt that the council may be looking towards the northwest quadrant as priority number 1, and possibly the intersection of Old 41 and Bonita Beach Road, that western quadrant right there, as another priority. We do have opportunities further north on Old 41. We'd be looking for you to possibly, and what we can do is provide your recommended locations to the staff at Lee County, and they would then do the calculations on the targeted community that would be represented by that, and that is for their annual plan that they send forward to the federal government.
Great. Thank you, Arlene. Council, anything? No, that's very good. Very, very good. Okay.
So we have authorization for me to sign the letter and send it?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we in agreement? Fred, Mike,
Everybody good?
Amy, Steve?
And
We're good?
Yes.
We'll be working with county staff to prioritize the Bonita Beach Road locations on the map as designated locations. And then we would, before August, come back to you and request that we identify the exact project.
Great. Good work. Great. Thank you.
Okay, and then item D has already been talked about at the workshop previously. I just need council to confirm a rejection of this bid and that this money is going to be somehow moved, so.
So moved.
Is there a second? Further discussion? Roll call.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman Sykes.
Aye. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mayor and council members report. Why don't we start with Amy?
In light of the fact that we postponed some landscape projects, and also in light of the fact I think some council people have commented that there might be some, lack of satisfaction with some of the result that we have in the landscape areas, may I suggest that we have some kind of a task force or committee started so that these landscape projects that we are going to be looking at, not necessarily this year, but maybe next year, be evaluated or reviewed in regard to what we got for our buck, what's planned, what might be, that are already existing, not only from the aesthetic point of view, but also from the maintenance point of view, because I am concerned with some of the plants that have been putting in from viewing them from a ride on the road, so I didn't look at each one of them. And we also should look at it from to see if it's serving the purpose to which it is intended. So I don't know if we could have like a task force or a committee or some kind of study or what we could do to do that. But I think we should look at that in total.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Carl, please.
The council's already has a tree advisory board in place. I don't know if you would want to have the members of that board do this work that's being requested, or if you want to set up an additional group.
Well, what
So-
were you thinking about?
I think we could certainly include the tree advisory board to do that. I don't know if we would have every member of it. I mean, I'm open to suggestions because I'm not really sure what a process I'm thinking of, but just I'm articulating a need, and I'm looking for input from other council members and from staff of how we can accomplish this.
I think it makes a lot of sense, particularly if we can get landscape architects and such on there, and include as appropriate, because this is more than just trees. I mean,
Right.
it's the whole thing, and as appropriate, have perhaps somebody from the tree advisory board on it as well.
You do have landscape architects on the tree advisory board.
Yeah.
Arborists.
So you're aware,
Sorry?
and arborists as well.
Yeah.
So,
If I
So-
could
Yeah,
intercede,
Fred.
I think one of the problems of the big project that we've just completed, council never really got to see that much of what we were going to get.
Right.
And I think that probably, I'm not saying it'd been different, but I think it would have, because I think if you saw it, the public would have seen it, and you might have gotten some comments. But I like Amy's idea, but I think the key to it is we've got to have more graphics on what we're going to get, because that's the key to it.
Okay.
I mean, that could be the recommendation of such an oversight committee. You know, what kind of process we could use to have a better result that is more satisfactory to the community. And I do have just a question about a matter that was handled or reviewed today, and that's on the Sun Village. And I am concerned about the lack of central sewer there. And when the applicant said that he already had 12 houses that are going to be ready, or 20 houses, he had a pretty big number that he said they're all already in process in Sun Village. All right, could I just have, I mean, would the council have some comment on that? Or, I mean, was that brought before council? Or how did this happen so that we're going to have a development there that, you know, could have the potential of having 34 houses without a central sewer? Did we not care about that, or, I mean, what's the process?
Actually, it's just the opposite. D.R. Horton had accumulated these properties over time. I don't know exactly when they had assembled them. However, probably a few months ago, they had come in and filed permits, and that was our first question, was how they were going to handle water and wastewater, given their location. We did coordinate with BSU, we coordinated with the city attorney's office. This was not something that we just looked at in a vacuum. In fact, while we normally turn out single-family permits within 5 days, these were held on to for a longer period of time, simply because we wanted to make sure that we got this answer right. Because of when these lots were created, because of where they were, we did not have the ability to require them to hook up to the sanitary sewer. They did not meet the standard for a mandatory connection ordinance. And I think that there was probably a real reason for the lack of willingness on the applicant's part, although I don't want to put words into their mouth, is because this would not just be a matter of running a sewer line in front of these houses and connecting, but it would also be installing a lift station as well, which is a significant expense, generally running about $100,000 to $250,000, depending upon the size. So we looked to see if there was a way that we could have this central sewer system extended. However, there really was not a regulatory hook for us to do that, and so that's why these houses are going in with septic systems.
Can we not talk about this? Is that what you're going to say?
No, what I want to do is I want to back up a little bit. No pun intended. Okay.
Oh, my God.
So prior to the city's incorporation, prior to there ever being a county comprehensive plan, different developments occurred where the county challenged it. The county said, hey, we have a comp plan. You need to get in line and do everything according to our comp plan. And as a result, we set up a system called minimum use determinations. It's, the county has the same thing, Monroe County. Any county that has a lot of environmental sensitive areas has a system like this. And it actually went to court, went through federal court, then state court, and it actually was a Bonita property for Lee County. And not in the DRGR. Kathy McGrath will probably be mad I mentioned her because it's right next door to where she lives, on Esplanade. But the case, and the county ultimately had to pay a lot of money because it did not honor one of these paper, vested rights prior to the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan has a very intricate process for what's called lots of record. And so a lot of record is where this subdivision, Sun Village, occurred way before there was ever the concept of a comprehensive plan. It's few and I made a parcel map, and I'll be happy to give you one. This is just a snap shot of a GIS picture, and I can explain it to you if you'd like. And most of the land out in the DRGR is either subdivided in 5 acres or 10 acres tracts. But there's a few areas that aren't, and you heard them talked about today. So it wasn't as if there was some magic came around. So there are these subdivisions that exist in the DRGR that existed, and so there was nothing for staff to really do.
I understand that. What I don't, with this minimal use designation, does that preclude their requirement to a connection to a central sewer? Or does it just allow you to build a single-family home on a small plot that's already been designated?
It allows you to build on a small plot or a small lot of, a lot of record of land. But what it does, because we took our codes originally from Lee County, there are areas in the city, and there's not just in the DRGR, but there are other areas in the city that do not have sewer, and probably will never have sewer. And in that case, you have to provide one of 3 systems, which would be a central sewer, a septic, or a water treatment plant, I think is what it's called.
This gets me back to the building permits that have already been agreed to, and because they're single, I'm going to give you my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because they were single-family homes, the only opportunity that we had was either to approve the single-family homes, and because they had the minimal use designation, we could not prevent them from doing that. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a very general statement, but yes, it is correct.
And we could not require them, when we gave the building permits, to require them to have a central sewer because they weren't close enough?
That's correct, because what will happen is one of 2 things. You either meet the standards of a mandatory connection, in which case they would have been required to connect to central sewer, or they would need to obtain permits from the Department of Health for septic tanks.
Because there was an exception, there was not an exception required, it didn't come before council. It was just normal business?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's what, I didn't understand the process. It was sort of, I thought a model home to me means you put up a model home, then you build all the lots after you sell it, but the lots are already there.
Yes, ma'am. And unfortunately, unfortunately, from really our perspective, when we recognize older lots, that prevents them from some current standards. Not all, but some current standards.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, anything else?
No.
Steve?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I just want to say that Arlene attended the West Coast Inland Navigation District, and we received, thanks to Arlene and the work that she did, we received $40,000 in matching funds. So and I believe this is the first time we've gotten the full amount, right? So, Arlene, thank you. And also thanks to Kathy McGrath, who serves on the committee. I don't know if you had anything to do with this, but thank you.
Gotta find a
Yep. Well, great. Thanks. And then after that, Arlene and I went down to the sustainability workshop, and Jennifer Hagan, Jay, and Sean did a absolutely fantastic job. And the one comment that stuck out for me was, you remember the 3 circles that interacted together, and she had the words sustainability on there. One woman in the audience said 2 years ago she was very indifferent when she went through Bonita Springs. Now that she sees all the things that are going on, she would consider moving here. So I thought that was a nice thing to hear. The other thing I have is week of May 15th is Police Week, and in Fort Myers at 9 o'clock in the morning in Centennial Park, there's going to be a fallen officer ceremony in Fort Myers. And Dave Grossi, who was a former Veterans Advisory Council chairperson, he will be the guest speaker. This is the second year in a row. And one of the issues that he's going to be talking about, as most of you know about Ferguson and all that, that as of this point, there are 113% increase in police murders just this year. So what Dave has asked me to ask all of you is to keep our Lee County Sheriff's Office deputies and all police officers in your prayers. The other thing is we all know that, I hope we all know that the sea turtle season started on Sunday and it ends October 31st. And it's my understanding that, Arlene, there's going to be some possible workshops on the lighting and for the public to attend.
We will be coordinating with Fish and Wildlife and
Right.
Turtle Time on providing some workshops here, and we will offer the opportunity for other jurisdictions to attend as well.
Mm-hmm. And the final thing I had, Carl, one of the constituents called me, and that person has an issue with there are at least 3 Potter signs in a row, and all I'm asking is if you could have the neighborhood services go take a look at it and see whether they're legal, whatever.
We've already been out there multiple times. The signs that are in place right now
Yeah.
are legal.
They're legal.
In terms of only having one on the property and also their size.
Okay.
Now, if the council thinks that, those signs are too large, perhaps we could take a look at amending some of our codes. But they did used to be in violation because they had multiple signs on the same
Yes.
property. It's been reduced to one, and Neighborhood Services did all of that,
Yep.
and their sizes are within compliance with the code.
I don't think the issue was too much with the size. I think it was, there's like 3 in a row, that kind of thing.
Well, but if they're working on 3 lots in a row,
That's a row.
they're
That's
allowed
right.
to have
They're allowed to
one
have
on
it.
each lot.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Steve. Pete?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Mike?
I did have a constituent email about the roundabouts, but we will have a workshop on roundabouts coming up. I thought somebody asked to have the Mike Walworth come in and talk, right?
Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure, I'll email him and let him know.
The Dundee roundabout.
Yep. The other thing would be, that was brought up earlier, the local bidding. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Because I know Fort Myers, City of Fort Myers does it also, but how do we give preference when we still have to take the
I don't have that
local bid?
information in front of me right now. If the city attorney can address it, but we can bring that back to you and get it to you.
Okay.
Happy to
Yeah,
do that.
I'd just like to know how it works.
I just don't have the ordinance in front
Because
of
we
me
are
right now.
required to take the lowest bid, right?
Lowest qualified bid, okay, except for local preference.
Okay, so
and
somebody
it allows an opportunity for a local qualified vendor, okay, to perhaps be a little bit higher than the lowest bid and still be acceptable.
Okay.
But we'll get that information to council.
Right, and it's a whole process, and I'll write something up to explain it and send it to council.
Okay. And the last thing is the historical bike ride is this Saturday, 4 o'clock. So I'd like to invite everybody out and ride. You do have to pre-register. All the information's on the city website.
Where does it start from?
It starts at the Lyles Hotel.
Okay.
Downtown Bonita Springs.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Anything, Fred?
Mutt.
Fred?
That's what I apologize for bringing this up at the last minute, but time is of the essence, and I've talked to Audrey about this, and she sees merit in it. And what I'm going to urge council, we can do it by consensus, and it's extremely important that we do not discuss this in any detail, as you'll understand when I give you the subject. We're about to go into a couple situations where we really need to have an independent outside counsel come back and examine 2 situations. And I would urge council to agree with that because she's even agreed to it. I would give you one suggestion. And that would be, one of our council members is an attorney from a different state. I would suggest that that person be allowed to talk to Audrey to, to kind of help. So we know I don't want to say we know, but
Okay.
at least he knows what's going on.
Audrey is saying yes, so that sounds all right.
Okay, so I have two council members that are, a council member and a mayor who are also attorneys from other jurisdictions, but,
Oh, are they? Okay, well,
okay.
I
so-
sold them short then.
So, I'm assuming you're talking about Councilmember O'Flynn?
Yeah.
Yes. mhm.
Okay, yeah, we can meet and talk. I'll need to, what, Councilmember Forbes and I talked about is just retaining some specialized services for backup, for some cases that we have coming up in the future, no different than the local council for that particular case has retained outside counsel from Tallahassee.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will
Anything
need a
else, Fred?
budget amendment.
No, I would say, I think if possible, they need to be from outside this immediate area here, because usually attorneys, one way or the other, they all know each other, and they all have worked for different clients and different hats, and I think we need truly a fresh set of eyes, and beyond that, I don't have anything else to say, but
Great, great, thanks. Yeah, Steve mentioned the Sustainability Conference. Fantastic job by everybody involved here at the staff. It was nice to give opening remarks. It was nice to meet a lot of people that participated in that. Absolutely, and I just wanted to make sure, is everybody settled in or no? Thank you very much, Debbie, with the committee assignments. Has everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, Greg and his
Greg.
committee assignments, we joked about that, but everybody knows when they are. I just want to, fantastic, very, very good. Want to remind people that this Friday, Governor Rick Scott will be here in town at the not so former Hertz Building, where we have a new company, E-Maint, is that how you say it, right? Opening, and I'll also be giving remarks there Friday, May 6th. And if anybody's interested, there is a Brownfield Symposium in Sarasota in early June that I'll be attending, along with at least Mayor Kevin Ruane from Sanibel and others at the Mayor's Roundtable. So those are my comments.
what
And
times?
Fred?
what time's Governor Scott going to be here?
10 o'clock, 11 o'clock?
10 o'clock?
9 o'clock for reception, 10 o'clock for opening remarks.
Right,
And
so,
10:45, I believe, is a tour of the
Yes.
facility.
right. So get there at 9 o'clock, Fred, if you want. You can mix and mingle and hear Governor Scott
And there'll be-
and Mayor Simmons at some point after 10.
Right.
Okay?
and there'll be food there.
Yeah, and there'll be food there, Fred.
Really, food?
I don't know how quite I'm going to stack up to the governor. I won't even try, so, but we'll give some comments and, okay, very good. So approval of minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
A second. Roll call.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilman Slack.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye. Okay, public comment. Any public comment at this time?
Yes, I have some good news.
Good news.
I'm Bonnie Whittemore. I work with the Historical Society, and thank you for mentioning the historic bike ride on Friday. But we had a chance to invite the Lee County Convention and Visitor Center down to meet with the Board of Directors with the Historical Society. They had never been downtown. They mentioned Sanibel, they mentioned in all their literature, so they will be coming back to take pictures, and we will be included on their website and their information. They're really pleased with all the redevelopment, so I just thought, I waited all this time, so I give you good news at the end. But that's something that we try to do. I mean, we've come a long way, so we need to shout about it.
Right.
And they said that 39% of the visitors come from other countries. Well, in the summertime, they want them to come. So they thought this would be a beautiful place, so they will be coming back and taking pictures. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah, Rick Steinmeier, I'm so happy to live in a country where the people have something to say, and you folks listen even to me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Alan, you've been patient this evening. How are you?
All right. Very disappointed.
Name for the record, I'm sorry.
Alan Glacier.
Thank you,
Alan. Bonita Springs. I'd like to know what we're going to do for historic preservation in Bonita Springs rather than giving lip service. I'd like to still see something done with the remains if that's what we have to do about the water tower. I don't know why it can't be tried to bring it down, and instead of just demolishing it. I think we should do that, and if we're going to bring it down, at least try to save it when we demolish it, if that's the point. I don't understand that. We had a building on Old 41 called the Community Hall for 57 years, something like that. We had a place that we could go meet. We could have activities. We could have graduation parties. We could have anniversary parties. We could have different things that people could go to. I'd like to know where we could go now. It wasn't, I'll put it right on where I believe it is. It wasn't maintained by the Parks Department. And that's the same thing with the water tower, and the same thing that's going on with the skateboard park. I'd like to know what we're going to do about historic preservation, and I'd like to know what we're going to do to maintain our parks. I suggested that we do something about bringing the water tower down and having something in the park there, and I'd like to know what this council, what this city's going to do about these type of things. I'm very disappointed in this situation, and I'd like to see something done about it to where we actually do something rather than lip service for historic preservation in Bonita Springs. We just had this comment about people wanting to see downtown coming here and impressed. Well, if we don't save anything, we already lost evidently the water tower now. We lost the Wayside Inn. What else do we have here from our past? We have the park there that we could do something with. If we have to rebuild everything, I don't think that's all the greatest thing in the world. But what do we have to save, and what are we going to do about it? I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. Hi, Kathy.
Kathy McGrath, before you put that gavel down, just one more positive thing I have to say. High school, isn't that, I mean, what a battle that's been, and we finally won it, and our students need it. That's the only thing I wanted to say before you close.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else from the public at this time? Motion to adjourn?
Drinking time.
All right, we're adjourned.